piece of paper, whatever. Yes. So, okay. All right, let's do kirtan. We'll just do kirtan for about 3 hours, and then we'll take prasadam and Hare Krishna. Isn't that living the wisdom of Bhakti, kirtan? That solved the problem. Yeah, if we know how to do kirtan, it would solve the problem. But we have to talk philosophy so we get the right mood for kirtan. But anyway, let's do kirtan. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Shamini Tinane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Pacharine Nirvise Sasunyavadi Paschati Dasatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Krishna Govinda Hari Murari. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One more time. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Gaur Premanandi, Hare. Can you hear me? Hare Krishna. Kripanidhi, ki jai. When I was doing that kirtan, I was thinking, Rati Kelly's probably thinking, that's an old Jewish song, right? Doesn't it sound like that? She's thinking some like rabbis singing that song. Right, isn't it? Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, nice to see you all. Nice to be with you in Mayapur. And I'm missing you in Mayapur. But here we are. All over the world, we're all together. And before we start, I thought it would really be nice if I describe a little bit about the book, like why I wrote it, what I was trying to communicate. And because one of the topics we're going to study today is going from the head to the heart, taking knowledge out of your head and putting it into practice. And that was the whole reason I wrote the book. And there's a history behind it, which I think would be useful for all of you. And I had started writing this book probably maybe 15 years ago. So at that time I had been a devotee 36 years. And I had lived in lots of temples, and I knew lots of devotees. And so I had a lot of experience with what the challenges were. And the other thing is that as you progress in devotional service, your challenges don't go away, they just get different. You're thinking, oh, when I become advanced, then it'll be like sliding down a slide. So I have bad news for you. Not exactly like that. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. It just gets different. Like you become different. So some of your old challenges go away, and some new ones come up. And then you also realize that you had some challenges you didn't even know you had, which is interesting. And you didn't know you had certain doubts, and you realize I have certain doubts that I didn't think I had. And then you start realizing what you're like certain aspects of yourself that you didn't realize were part of you, that you now see, oh, actually I have this problem, or I'm not as good as I thought I was. In some areas, I'm much worse than I thought I was. So that was going on. I think that just goes on as you advance in devotional service through experience. But what was also going on is I was approaching our philosophy a little bit differently. And that came through my experience of being introduced to some extremely successful teachers who were not Vaishnavas, but were very successful in teaching what they teach, either material or psychological or spiritual, but how they were teaching it. And basically what they were doing was they were breaking things down, taking an idea and breaking it down so you understand it bit by bit, and then teaching how to put it into practice bit by bit. And so that was helping me a lot in my spiritual life. It was helping me in my material life. It was helping me in my psychological life. It was helping me everywhere to get a better understanding of how to achieve things that I wanted to achieve. Simultaneously, what was happening, and this is going to happen, if this hasn't happened to you, it will happen to you, or perhaps it's happening to us all the time. I got, how we say in America, I got thrown off my game. What does it mean to be thrown off your game? You ever been thrown off your game? Like, have you ever been walking and you just fell over? Like, and you don't know why? You're just like knee gave out, or got dizzy, or, you walked on a root of a tree or a rock, and you just, you've walked that same road every day of your whole life, and then one day you fall over. Well, sometimes life is like that. Like you're just going, and one day something happens. This kind of never happened before. And it throws you off your Krishna consciousness. And it could be something external, which you can't control, or it could be something internal. So in my life, what happened for me, there was a certain point in my life where I was confronted with new situations, external situations, which I've never been confronted with before, in relationship to being a grihasta, being a husband, a father, and a provider. So I had to start doing things that I didn't traditionally do as a devotee. And so it threw me off my game. What I was confronting was different than what I normally I confronted Mangalartik, Tulsi Puja, 16 rounds, Bhagavatam class, service all day. And now, sometimes I'd find myself working till midnight, getting up at 7 a.m., having to be somewhere at 8 o'clock, just like crazy. Life became crazy, like totally different. And not always in the association of devotees. Or this even happened to me as a devotee fully engaged, just being in a totally different situation. So the best way I could describe it, and I don't know if this is the best example for everyone, but it's a boxing example, because sometimes you have boxers who are undefeated. Nobody can beat them. And they go into the ring, and after 10, 20, 30 fights, 50 fights undefeated, and they get defeated by someone that nobody thought could defeat them. And basically, if you ask them what happened, they'll say, I didn't expect this was going to happen. He punches this way. I didn't expect it. It was just totally out of nowhere, boom. So life is like that, isn't it? Sometimes, like out of nowhere, you just get punched. Ever happened to you? You just get like, what happened? In boxing, when these guys get punched hard, they go unconscious. They don't know where they are. They don't know what happened. They're just like, all of a sudden, when they become conscious, they realize they're laying down. So life is like that sometimes, and that happens in our spiritual life. So when I was in this new situation, there were a lot of punches coming that I'd never, had punches before, because I wasn't fighting that battle. And I started thinking, this requires a new strategy, a new way of thinking, a new way of looking at our philosophy, a new way of practicing it. At least, maybe not new, but adjusted. So that forced me to start looking at our philosophy a little bit differently. And what I had realized was I had become accustomed to looking at it very theoretically, very philosophically, very intellectually, because we have a philosophy and we go to class and we hear philosophy mostly, right? Well, we hear Leela, but mostly in ISKCON, unless you're on Parikrama, you're basically hearing philosophy, mostly, isn't it? Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, we're Jivatma, we're this, God is this is material energy, spiritual energy, Chinta Beta Beta Tattva, like that. You know, we're hearing stories, but what's the whole idea of the story? The whole idea of the story is to get the point. What's the philosophy, right? So we're very accustomed to philosophy. And so, having been exposed to other teachers who sometimes presented things that we teach also, but in a much different way. As I said, dissecting it, and then showing how to practically apply it. I decided that's how I want to teach Krishna consciousness. And that's how I decided I wanted to understand Krishna consciousness. Did you know, I'm going to put this in the chat. I'm going to put some things in the chat. Radha, Priya, whatever I put in the chat, please save it because I want to send it to everybody. So learning goes through 3 stages, which is you gain knowledge. That's stage 1. Then you assimilate. I shouldn't have hit. And then you assimilate. Assimilate knowledge. That's step 2, and then you apply knowledge. That is the Vedic paradigm. So the application is the stage that I felt was like extremely neglected in my own approach to Krishna consciousness, and I think in general in the way we presented Krishna consciousness, that the application part you don't hear much about. So when I started focusing on application, 2 things happened. One thing is devotees started saying, oh, I really like what you're teaching because it's practical. So I was happy to hear that. But indirectly what they were saying is what everyone else is teaching is not practical. It's almost like they were saying to me, you're the only one who teaches anything practical. Everyone else is just teaching. I mean, they didn't say that, but that's how I was taking it. You know, like, oh, I really like your classes. They're practical. Oh, that means nobody's teaching anything practical. Of course, that's not entirely true, but it's common. It's not so common, right? Then the second realization I had, and I'm sure you can relate to this. So no, stage 1 is you just try to understand what is being said. You know, just get it. Okay, it's said this and that. So you get the basic information. Then you ask yourself, do I actually understand this? Like, could I explain this? Have you ever gone to a class and you go and you come home and you say, that was a really good class, and your husband, wife, friend says, well, what did they say? And you try to explain it, and all of a sudden you realize you can't explain it. Did that ever happen to you? Well, that's the assimilation stage, where you actually can explain it, like you've understood it. Well, he said something about when Prabhupada was a child, something about, I'm not sure what he said. I have to listen to it again, something like that. So you didn't even get to the first stage in that, but you could get to the first stage, you know, and you could explain what was said. Then I say, I don't understand that. Can you explain that? And you say, that's all I understand. So basically you just regurgitated it, but you haven't assimilated it. So when you assimilate it, it's like you can put it in your own words, you've understood it. Now here's what I realized. This is interesting, and I want you to reflect on this in your own life. When I was assimilating, when I was intellectualizing it and then assimilating it, and assimilation is just when you say, I understood it, I got it. I finally got it. Have you ever said that? Like you're reading something, or you go to a class and then you come home and say, I finally understood this after all these years. Have you ever said that? I finally got it. Well, I can guarantee you, you're going to say that the rest of your life about that thing that you thought you finally got. Because you realize spiritual knowledge is so vast that even though you think you finally got it, 10 years later you realize, nah, I didn't really finally get it. But it goes in stages according to your realization. So, but we all have this experience. Oh, I think I've understood it. I think I finally got it. Yes, 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 right? And so when we get an intellectual understanding or an intellectual realization, I'm going to write this down. It's such a common problem. Intellectual realization is not always synonymous with actual realization or assimilation. That's what I just wrote down, and you're going to get to see it. So you have your chat open, you can see it. In other words, very, very, very often when we really get it on the assimilation level, we think we've realized it. Okay. There's a problem. And I was thinking about this problem this morning, and I'm sure you've had the problem with this. Have you ever read a verse in the Bhagavatam and you think, no, that's not true? You know it's true, but it just doesn't, there's no evidence. You have no evidence in your life, anything you've seen or experienced, or you don't have full evidence. You have a little evidence. So I was thinking of this verse. This is a tough verse we have a problem with. When you become a devotee, you develop all good qualities. You've heard that verse? And if you're not a devotee, you don't have any good qualities. You've heard that verse, Prahlad Maharaj? That's like a tough verse, isn't it? It's like, wait a minute. Nobody has any good qualities but devotees. Devotees have all the good qualities. The non-devotees don't have any. And you look out the window and go, but that devotee over there, he lied to me yesterday. And that devotee over there, he borrowed money and he said he'd pay me back. And now I'm asking for it. And he said, I don't owe you anything. And that devotee over there, I went to their house. It was a total mess. I couldn't even find a place to walk. There were clothes everywhere. And that devotee, he's really mean to his wife. Okay, I don't want to go on further, but you know what I'm talking about. Have you ever seen that or thought like that? You don't want to admit it. No one's raising their hand. That means yes, everybody. When I ask questions, yes or no questions, the answers are always yes. So, now, you are all devotees. I have a question for you, and it's not a yes answer for this one. Is everything, because you're a devotee, is everything you do good? Yes or no? Now, if you're Donald Trump, you would answer yes, of course. If Donald Trump becomes a devotee, we ask him this question. He will say, yes, everything I do is good. Right? But honestly speaking, I think we all admit that we're not always doing everything perfectly well as we should. And so all of a sudden, well, how does that verse? You're like, well, the devotee has all good qualities, but I see I don't have any. I'm missing out in certain areas. And I see people who aren't devotees, they have some qualities I don't have. So what's going on here? I thought I understood the verse. It was very clear. But if I'm honest with myself, if I'm objective with myself, if I look at myself, I can see, well, I understand what it means, but I'm not necessarily actually doing what it says. I'm not necessarily living that. I mean, I do have some bad qualities. Or a devotee is always respectful, a devotee is always humble, or a devotee should be. And I'm not. So the more I studied this, the more and more I realized that I thought I understood all kinds of things that I only intellectually understood, but I actually wasn't living them. I wasn't practicing them. And so living the wisdom of Bhakti means, here's the principle. I'm going to write this down. Here's the principle. If I understand it, it really means, no, I have to edit myself. To live it means to understand it. You understand? Like, to fully say that I've understood something in Vedic terms of these three areas of knowledge, you would have to be living it. And if you're not living it, all you could say is, I understand it theoretically. Have you ever said to yourself, I know I should do this, and you don't do it? Has that ever happened to you? That's another yes answer. If you don't answer yes to this question, you have to leave this workshop. So you don't need it. You're perfect already. So I know I should do this, but is only theoretical understanding. And in the full definition of what it means to know, I actually don't know it yet because I don't live it. I think we can all relate to this, right? Now, the problem I was referring to before is that sometimes I'm not living it and I don't even know I'm not living it. I think I am because I understand it intellectually, and I haven't distinguished between intellectual understanding and actual living it. Now, does that make sense? Yeah. So if I were to give a class right now and tell you, you're not the body, you're not a woman, you're not a man, you're not Indian, you're not European, American, Australian, South American, Russian, you'd all be starting to fall asleep. And you'd be thinking, I've heard that a million times. I know that. Why is he talking about that? I know that. Okay, now my question to you is, based on the definition of knowledge being to understand, assimilate, and practice, how many of you think you actually know that? Raise your hand if you actually know that. I mean, when I wake up in the morning, I kind of, feel my body, and it feels like a man's body. So I kind of think I'm a man in a man's body. That's kind of my normal, I usually walk in the men's bathroom because I identify with the man. I mean, that's normal, right? So Sukadev Goswami didn't. He wouldn't have walked in the men's bathroom. He could walk in any bathroom. He was not on the bodily platform. He didn't have to wear clothes. There was no problem. And none of the women were disturbed because they knew he didn't identify with his body. So I started to realize there were so many things I thought I understood that I didn't because I only intellectually understood them. But I wasn't practicing them well, or I wasn't practicing them at all. But the worst part was I didn't realize I wasn't living them. That's the problem. That's the biggest problem. Now, you could understand what I just said theoretically, but if you don't understand what you're not living, that you think you are living, then you've got a problem because you can't correct a problem you don't know that you have. they have a saying in the world of self-development, you don't know what you don't know. Like, duh, of course I don't know what I don't know. But what does that mean? It means there are things you don't even know that you don't even know that you don't know. Which is, it's one thing if you tell me, well, I know that I don't do this. Okay, that's good. You know that you don't do it. That's good. But if you don't even know that you don't know that you don't do it, that's a problem, right? I don't know what I don't know that I don't know. Should I write that down? Is that one too many I don't knows? I don't know. I think it was one too many, right? I don't know what I don't know. Or is it, I don't know what I don't know that I don't know? I'll put that I don't know. You can go with it either way. I don't know what I don't know that I don't know. There it is. Okay, so this was and let me tell you one of the big things that happened to me to help me realize this. As you know, I developed a workshop on forgiveness. And I would joke with the devotees in the workshop, like right in the beginning, it was like all devotees, a whole room of devotees. And I'd say, well, how many of you believe in reincarnation? I mean, believe in karma, which of course I already knew. We all did because we're all devotees. So everyone raises their hand. I said, okay, this is a workshop on forgiveness. Now, you believe in reincarnation, right? Like what goes around comes around. Whatever happens, you created, you deserve, it comes back. So I don't understand why you're here. It doesn't make sense. Interesting, right? It gets worse. Bhagavatam says that whatever bad happens, you should think, well, I deserve worse. So I could have asked the question, do you all believe in Bhagavatam? Everyone would say, yes. And I would say, if you all believe in Bhagavatam, what are you doing in a forgiveness workshop? That doesn't make any sense because whatever happens to you, you deserve worse than that. So why are you blaming this person? That's, okay, right? So it became very, very clear at this point that what I was going through, it was like shining in my face. Here we have a room full of devotees, some very senior devotees with resentment issues. Does that make any sense? Well, it does make sense now, right? Because they were there because they understood with their head they shouldn't have resentment, but their heart had it. So head, heart, two different worlds sometimes. And so this is what I realized, that maybe it doesn't sound like a big realization, but it was big for me because I was living it, I was applying it, and I realized that we, especially in the early days of our movement, you have all gone through this. We had equated spiritual advancement with how much we accomplished. And basically, at least when I was a young devotee, there were only a few things to accomplish. Sell books, open temples, make devotees. Or support the devotees who are selling books, opening temples, and making devotees. And also worshiping the deity. That was basically the standard. So if you could open temples, if you could distribute a lot of books, if you could make devotees, if you could be a temple president, a head pujari, you were considered what? What's the word we use? Starts with an A. She's a very what devotee? He's a very what? Advanced. Very advanced. Well, how is it you become advanced? Because you know how to sell books. Well, maybe you sell books because you're advanced. That's true. But maybe you sell books because you're just good at selling books and you like doing it and you're extroverted and it's fun. And you want to be number one and you want to get all the Maha plates. That's also, there are a lot of good reasons to sell books. Mahaprasadam is one of them. And getting the applause every week when they read the scores, that's another good one, right? Of course, we please Prabhupada, and there's so many other reasons. But you all know what I'm talking about. So we got to this point where, like, spiritual advancement was all about your position. You're like, you want to be a temple president? Oh, he's a temple president. Too bad for the women, you couldn't really compete because there weren't any temple presidents in Prabhupada's day, and you couldn't become a sannyasi. You were saved from all this false ego stuff that we had to go through. If I could become a temple president, then I could become a sannyasi or I could become a GBC. Wow. I would really be advanced. And that's how we would think. And people would treat us like that also. So it just made it worse. Oh, Prabhu, you're so advanced, you distribute so many books. Yes, I know. And we'd try to be humble and say, it's just Krishna's mercy. But inside we're thinking, yeah, I'm advanced, I distribute a lot of books. And I don't want to minimize that you're not advanced because you're doing it, but you may not be, or it may only be part of the story. So you'd have people who are distributing lots of books, but they'd be mistreating devotees. They'd be offending devotees. They'd be sleeping late, schnicking their rounds, eating Govardhan Hill breakfasts, and then, going to sleep after breakfast, and then going on in Sankirtan like 2 hours, they could distribute 10 times more books than anybody could in 8 hours. And everyone's like, oh, Prabhu, you're like so great. And so more and more we were seeing this dichotomy of this problem that we were acknowledging or being recognized and acknowledging others as well for their service, which is good, and service is, as I said, often a symptom of empowerment, but not necessarily. And that started to become the standard of advancement. And because of that, what I saw, and I'm just saying these things because I think you can relate to all this, what I saw was it kind of clouded the introspection. We weren't really looking, it's like, how did I distribute the books? Who cares how? I just did it, But all these people, like, are screaming at you. Yeah, whatever. They're just demons. It's like, we don't care. It doesn't matter. And you're the Sankirtan leader, and you're pushing everyone out of the van, and, they're falling out of the van and cutting their nose on the sidewalk. Just get out there, Prabhu. You're in Maya. It was, I'm exaggerating, but it was a lot like that. That's what was important. And so sometimes devotees were mistreated. We would mistreat devotees. We would be somewhat negligent on our sadhana because we felt we had a right, because we were book distributors. And, if we had to eat, all the maha burfi, to get out there and do books, we would eat it, even though it put us to sleep. So at a certain point, then I said, okay, we have to put a stop to this. This is not good. This is not going to help our movement. And so then I decided, all right, I will focus. I will focus on issues that I think everybody's facing, everybody's dealing with, and a lot of these issues nobody's talking about because either we don't know how to talk about them, we don't know who to talk about them with, or we're afraid if we talk about them, we'll be put on the first train to Siberia to peel potatoes for the next 10 yugas. If anybody finds out, what's going on in my mind, that's it, it's over, I'll be excommunicated. So a lot of this stuff wasn't talked about, except sometimes amongst friends or amongst devotees with their counselors who are trying to help them, but not publicly. And so then I thought, all right, we need to talk about it. And we need to start showing step by step how to do things. So then, when we did that forgiveness workshop, I came up with 25 steps how to forgive. And so I realized, if you have a forgiveness issue, what's one of your biggest problems or what's one of your biggest questions? You're going to say, I want to forgive, but I don't know, what's the word? How. You know how many times I've heard that? Yeah, I probably heard that more times than I've chanted rounds. I really want to do this, but I don't know how. And I thought, are the answers in our books? Are they there? Now, as you know, you can't go to a chapter in our book to try to find entitled The 25 Steps to Forgiving, right? Have you seen that chapter? What about the 32 Steps to Humility? What about the 15 attitudes to adopt for better japa? Well, Harinam Chintamani is probably the closest. Harinam Chintamani by Bhaktivinoda Thakur is probably the closest thing to this dissecting things down into little pieces and then into practices. So that's what I did with the forgiveness workshop. And then people would come, they'd go through it, and they may have had resentment issues for like 30 years, and they'd go through the workshop, and in 2 days they'd give it up. Just because we dissected everything into little bite-sized pieces, and we had practices which they could do, which would help them let it go. And it worked. And that was happening over and over again, and that was what I call an OMG experience. An OMG experience means, I think we're onto something. I think we say in America, eureka, a eureka experience. Do you say that? Eureka is actually a place in America. You say that also? In Croatia? Eureka! It was a eureka experience. And so right at this time, Satchidananda Swami started, right at the same time that I was, or just shortly after, Satchidananda Swami started doing japa workshops, japa retreats, and he was doing the same thing. He was really getting devotees to reflect on their japa and realize how bad their japa was, and everyone's like had their head down and go, "Yeah, you're right." It's like, "Whoa, well, you've been chanting japa for like 35 years. Like, why didn't you do anything?" I don't know. I can't say. But I can say why, because the emphasis was on producing. Open the temples, make the devotees, shave the heads, put on the saris, distribute the books, distribute how many plates of prasadam, how many books, how many temples, how many devotees. And while that was going on, everyone was schnicking, wom-romming their way through the morning program. And then Maharaj comes on the scene and says, wait a minute. This isn't going to work. If we go the rest of our life like this, it's not going to work. Something has to change. So he had done the work himself, and then he was sharing that with devotees. Like, this is how you do it. This is the attitude with which you chant. This is how you approach the holy name. This is what you feel. This is what it means. This is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. And it was like turning our heads around. Oh, I've never seen the holy name that way. I've never chanted that way. It's just a new mantra. Maharaj, did you put LSD in this mantra? What's going on here? This is like completely different experience. I'm feeling so Krishna conscious now. It was like day and night. And so many devotees realized after their first japa workshop, japa retreat, is like, I don't think I've actually ever chanted Hare Krishna before today. This is like devotees over 3 decades in the movement. It's like, I think this was the first day I've actually understood what the Maha Mantra is. So that's a little history behind this book. And then this book was originally just written as articles. I had newsletters, and I was putting a newsletter out every month. And I thought, well, someday I'll have a book. It'll be an easier way to write a book, just one newsletter a month. So that's what we did. And I picked issues which were very, very, I think, relevant. And so the head from the heart, which Rati Kelly was saying was one of the topics to talk about. The head to the heart It's getting from I know I should to I will. So what I would like you to write down right now, even though this might be difficult, is write down all your I know I shoulds, but. Like, so this can be I know I should do this, or I know I shouldn't do that. Both. Like what I'm not doing that I know I should be doing, I really should be doing this, but I'm not. Or I really shouldn't be doing this, but I am. Just write them down because I want you to see for yourself how many of those you have where you're kind of not like synced up with the way you should. And if you're brave enough, you can share some in the chat. And I'm sure we're all going to have similar ones, if not identical ones. I know I should. All right, we know the get up early one, that's like a given. Right, I know I should get up earlier, but. You don't have to put the but. It's not necessary. It's just you don't have to put anything after the but if you don't want to. It's just the first part. I know I shouldn't eat ice cream, pizza, and chocolate cake at midnight, but okay. You have any brave soldiers who want to put something in the chat? I know I should. The problem with this chat is you can't go on anonymously. That's why nobody wants to do it. Is there any way to go anonymous? That would get us more participation in the chat. Oh, I know I should prioritize my chanting, but yeah, we all know that. Actually, it doesn't even matter because I'm going to bring this to another. It doesn't even matter what it is. I'm going to give this. I want to bring this to another level. Okay, well, we'll start with this because you all have something. I know it could be something simple. I know I should be more compassionate. I should be more kind, more regulated, more tolerant. Anybody get humble? I know I should be more humble. Or you're already too humble. You're already humble enough. So, okay. We have a problem here. When we say, I know, I should, and we don't do it, what's the problem? It's in the head, and it's not in the heart. I want to explain something to you which could completely turn your life around, which would certainly make this 3 hours worth spending. Do you know that most people don't do things because they know they should do them? Did you know that? You probably know that by experience. Why do we do things? Because we feel them. Have you ever said, I don't feel like doing it? You probably say that when you look at the dishes in the sink, right? Big piles of pots and dishes. I don't really feel like cleaning them, right? But you usually clean them because if you have to see them tomorrow morning in the sink, you're even going to feel worse, so you just do it. But generally, ladies and gentlemen, I'm being politically correct here now, ladies and gentlemen, because if I say Prabhus and Matajis, then someone might think I'm discriminating, giving the Prabhus the upper hand or something. The men, the upper hand. So, it's very, very important to understand. We do things because we feel. It's an emotional thing. So, if you understand something, you're not doing it, it's probably because you don't feel like doing it. That sounds kind of common sense, doesn't it? It's so common that you need to get a PhD in psychology to understand it. But think about it, right? When do you act? You act when there's emotion there. So, that being said, this is an insight of how to go from the head to the heart. It would make sense then, for going to the head to the heart, you need some emotion, right? You need something, like you're a couch potato. Every day you're gaining like 1 kg. And your husband or wife is saying, get off the couch, go out, do some, mow the lawn, wash the car, move your body. Tomorrow, right? There's no feeling there, right? And then you go to the doctor, and the doctor says, Mr. Smith, you need exercise, because if you don't, I can guarantee you'll be sitting on the operating table for a cardiac arrest within 6 months. That might motivate you a little bit, more than your wife asking you to wash the car. What do you think? Yes or yes? Right? So he's starting to feel like, I could die in 6 months. Okay. He's getting motivated now, right? The feeling, I really need to exercise. Something changed. The doctor was expert enough to get him out of his head. Yeah, I know what you're saying is true. Yeah, I probably should exercise. Yeah. And you can, I should, I know I should chant my rounds earlier. Yeah, I know I should focus when I chant my rounds. Yeah, I know I should, study Bhagavatam. Yeah, I know, all of that. There's no feeling there. That's why you're not doing it. Right? Let me ask you a question. Can you think of 3 things right now you could do to improve your japa that you're not doing? I know the answer is yes, because I've asked this question to 10,500,000 devotees, and they all came up with 3 things in about 10 seconds. We all know. 3 things we could do to improve our japa. Yes? Could you come up with 3 in 10 seconds? You already have, right? Just thinking, right? Everybody can come up with something. Yeah, well, I should chant here, and I shouldn't be doing this while I chant, and I should be chanting earlier, and whatever it is. I should be chanting in the temple, or I should read a chapter of Bhagavatam before I chant, whatever it is. I should get in the mood, whatever it is, right? You at least could come up with one thing. And so the next question is, well, that was easy. You came up with that in 10 seconds, just like that. Something came up, at least one thing, right? What's the next question I'm going to ask? You know the question. You don't want to hear it, right? I'm going to embarrass you. But I'm also guilty, so don't feel bad. I'm not picking on anybody. If you so easily, it came to your mind 1, 2, 3 things you could do to improve your chanting, you didn't even have to think about it. It was so obvious. Why aren't you doing it? Isn't that the obvious next question? Don't you think? And now you know the answer. What's the answer? I'm going to imitate a 5-year-old. Can you chant your rounds? The 5-year-old's at 1 round. Can you chant your 1 round? I don't want to. Can I do it later? Yes? You ever feel like that when it comes to japa? Like you're 5 years old and your mother's asking you to chant. I don't feel like it. Do I have to do it now? Yeah. My daughter says, never trust your later self. Can I do it later? Don't trust your later self. Often your later self never shows up. Have you noticed that? Don't put too much faith in your later self. Can we do it later? You're going to feel the same way later. You're not going to feel like doing it later. So very few devotees are so determined that they just understand in their head they should do it. And no matter how they feel, they just transcend it and do it. Most mortal beings, most devotees do things because they feel like it. And if you don't feel like it, we were just doing japa. We do japa every day. And one devotee had joined. I'd never seen this devotee. I think she joins, but she never had shown herself chanting. And so we were all chanting, and she put on her video. And she really looked like she didn't want to be chanting. She really looked like it was a burden. I mean, I just could see on her face, it was like, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Really, really hard. It was really, really, I could see, just really, really hard. Now, there are devotees that just have so much determination, no matter if it's sweet, not sweet, whatever. They just do it. But most of us, have you ever chanted your 16 rounds? And I'm sure the answer is yes, many times. When you didn't want to chant? You ever done that? You just didn't feel like it? What was that experience like? Not good. Not good, right? Because there's no feeling there. My meditation is, I don't want to do something that I am supposed to do every day and have no feeling. It's like being married and say, you know, if you have a bad marriage, you go to a marriage counselor, you read books, you do something because you want to have a good feeling about your spouse. You want to have a good feeling about the Grihastha ashram. You want to have a good feeling about it, because if you don't, then it's kind of like that japa, which is like, it's just a burden. Right? So I think the next question you're thinking is, okay, you say, okay, Prabhu, this makes sense. If there's no feeling, there's no inspiration. And if there's no inspiration, it's all in the head, and it's all in the I know but, you know. So here's a problem. This is a huge problem. Every class you go to, you're going to learn something that you may not do. So you add to your unlimited lists of I know buts. And every time you add something to your I know buts, you become more depressed, right? Isn't it? If you want to become depressed, become a devotee, because what better way to become depressed is to learn what you should do and not do it, and add to your list every day in Bhagavatam class, right? So it sounds funny, but it's true. You know, we're just, you know, we're inviting people to become devotees, but if they're not motivated, it just becomes depressing after a while, and it becomes hard for some people to stay devotees. Have you noticed that? Like 5 to 10 years, it's like, if you make it past 10, it's pretty, you're pretty much made it. 10, 15, you're probably going to make it the rest of your life. But those first 10, you know, 5 for most, 6. So what happens is they come with all kinds of inspiration, right? This is so good, material life is so bad, you know. And after a while, a kind of shnick, ram, 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 you know, it's like they lose it. They lose that enthusiasm. So if we're going to be successful in aligning what we know with the inspiration so that we feel it and we want to do it, what I have found the best, there's a few things that I have found that work tremendously well. One of the most powerful things you can do towards something that does not inspire you, that really you need to be inspired by, is to figure out how to appreciate it. Now, we do this with japa. A lot of what I do in my japa workshops is get devotees into appreciation mode, to feel that their life has been blessed in the most unique and special way because they have the holy name. Because most devotees, when they chant, it's kind of like, I wish I didn't have to do this. Maybe I'll become a Vallabha. They don't have to chant. They just do puja. It's a lot easier. A lot of devotees feel this way. Do you ever feel this way when you sit down to chant? It's like, 16 is so much. It takes so long. And I got so many things to do, and it's so hard. And why can't we just, maybe I'll join Gaudiya Math and just do 4, like. And plus, if you go there, you only have to do 3 principles or something, 3.2 or something like that, whatever, So lots of devotees will feel this way when they're chanting. Not all the time, but sometimes. And some devotees always feel this way. Right? So, you ever feel that before you chant? Kind of like, Can you give me 1 second? I have some hot water with lemon in it, and I left it outside. It's just out the door. I'll be back in under 10 seconds. I kept my vow. That was under 10 seconds. You know why I'm so funny? Because I've learned that people learn better when it's fun. Did you know that? People learn more when it's fun. This is slices of lemon in hot water. It'll cure anything that's wrong with you. You don't believe me? Well, if you eat the lemons after you drink them and eat the lemon pills, then you're double insurance. Nothing will get you. COVID will run away from you if you eat lemon pills. Put it on the internet. We just found the cure, right? Put it in capsules. We'll get rich. So what I found is that, well, it's interesting because in marriage counseling, one of the things that you try to do is get the husband to appreciate the wife, get the wife to appreciate the husband, because when a relationship goes bad, the appreciation goes down. You're like, you come home and you see your wife and it's like, you're home, huh? I thought you were going out. You're like, you're just happier if she's not there, right? Or vice versa. So there's no appreciation, right? But when there's appreciation, like the counselor will say something, you like about your wife, or specifically what my wife does. It said, like, why, what were you attracted to when you first met one another? What did you like about one another? So you start reminding yourself, right? So I'm going to ask you a question. What did you like about chanting Hare Krishna when you first came to Krishna consciousness? What did you like about it? Write it down. What did you like about it? I'm going to write appreciation down just so we remember. What did you like about chanting Hare Krishna? And what did you feel? What did you like? What did you feel? Just remember when you first came. What was it like? I think it was an Oh My Govinda experience, right? Eureka, I found it. Wasn't it? Ecstatic, something like that, right? This is amazing. Yes? Anyone had a bad experience when they started chanting Hare Krishna? My hair fell out. Other than that, everything was good. Well, didn't actually fall out right away, got shaved off, but that was a consequence of chanting Hare Krishna. My head was shaved. Okay, now, if we put on our logical brains, if you had a good experience, when you were first a devotee chanting, we would just do some math and think, well, by now, we could multiply it, let's say, by how many years you've been a devotee. That experience, we should have multiplied it, right? 10 years, okay, multiply that experience 10 times. Is it 10 times better now? Probably not. Should it be? Yeah, it should. So how are we going to get it back there? We're going to start, I'm just using the holy name as an example. We're going to do this tomorrow in the class. I try to help devotees appreciate how rare the holy name is this holy name, because this holy name is not available in any other yuga. And Prabhupada is giving it to us without really asking much. And he's even willing to initiate us, or he's willing to authorize his disciples to initiate as well, if we're just willing to try. And this holy name, if you have this, you don't have to do really anything else. You know that? If you actually chant properly, you don't need anything else. You don't have to, do pilgrimage. You don't have to do all this puja, samskara, varna, ashram. Like all this you don't need. And what do you get? Manjari Bhav, you could become a Manjari. You understand Mahaprabhu's Mahabhav. Like it's like off the charts amazing. And if this were another age, the Brahmins, if this were another age and the Brahmins saw us, they'd run across the street so they didn't have to get near us. We're like outcasts. We're like losers. We're like the losers of the losers of the losers. And Mahaprabhu is like, oh, here, losers. Here's your ticket back to Goloka. Like, you just chant this mantra. I have to do it for 2 hours. You still have 22 hours to do whatever you're going to do. But just take out 2 and do this, and just don't eat any meat or drink alcohol, and control yourself a bit, and you'll enter Braj Loka. And you couldn't enter Braj. Not qualified. You could go to Vaikuntha, but not Braj. And now you can go. And if you were born, let's say we all took birth 100 years ago in our countries, South Africa, Israel, Croatia, or whatever Croatia was then. I don't know, what was it? Yugoslavia or something else? America, India, Italy. Where do we have people from? Brazil, Canada, Chile, Russia, or Ruski, Singapore, the place of lions, Singapore. We would have been a little too early we wouldn't have missed the boat. We've been too early for the boat, right? Well, it's a saying in America. We would have missed the boat. We'd have missed the boat because the boat hadn't come in yet. So, if I had just taken birth, like, I met Prabhupada when I was 20. So if I had been born, let's say 30 years before or 20 years before, culturally, I wouldn't have been ready for Krishna consciousness. I wouldn't have been interested. I would have been just culturally conditioned to not want it. So I was like born like at the perfect time. Wow. We're all born at the perfect time. So when you start talking about this and you start thinking about this, you realize, oh my God, this is like so special. And then you start talking about what you can get out of the holy name, what the experiences you can get, the connection you can get from Krishna just by chanting. You don't have to do anything. You be sitting in your pajamas. You don't even have to take a bath. Just at least wash your face and hands. Rinse your mouth out, and you can chant japa and go deep, 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 deep anywhere. Could be in Heathrow Airport, walking down a street, on a subway, anywhere. It doesn't have to be in the Dham. And you can have amazing connection with Krishna. You don't have to put on a dhoti and be a Brahmin and go on an altar. You can have that same Krishna incarnate in sound. And the more you talk about it, and the more you Think about it. And the more you glorify it, what happens to your feelings about the holy name? They start to change. You start to think, I am so fortunate. I was taking this for granted. I'm so fortunate I have the holy name. It's so special. It's so rare. It's so unique. And all of a sudden, what happens when you chant? It becomes a different experience. No, I want to chant. I'm so fortunate to have this, What kind of fool am I to not take advantage of this? This could give me everything I need. It totally changes your experience. Experience means feeling. Now, just by a little appreciation. Isn't that amazing? The power of appreciation? Don't ever underestimate the power of appreciation. It can switch your perception. It can switch your feelings about things, about people, about yourself. 180 degrees within a minute. Completely can flip you around. We always talk about self-compassion, self-love, I hate myself, I'm so stupid. I never do anything right. Yeah. A little self-appreciation will heal all that. You're not so stupid. Believe me, there are people more stupid than you, don't worry. And you became a devotee, so you couldn't be that stupid. At least according to Lord Chaitanya, those who aren't devotees, they're actually stupid. So you think, yeah, I must not be that stupid because I became a devotee. That's one point for me. So you go down the list and you see you've got many points going for you. And so that self-love, self-appreciation, you feel better about yourself. You get energy. You can face the world. You can do things you couldn't do before just by a little appreciation. So it's kind of like a, we say a panacea medicine. So we started saying we need to get the feeling to do something, and then we went to this point saying the feeling can come through appreciation. That's one way it comes, by appreciating it. And it could be your husband, your japa, your sadhana, could be Mayapur, Prabhupada's books, whatever. Just, appreciation for Prabhupada's books. He's up at midnight writing them. For who? You. Yeah, you. The one you see in the mirror, that's you. That's the one he's writing it for. Me? You mean you're talking to me? Me? Yeah, you. He's writing it for you. Meditate on that. Prabhupada's up at midnight writing the books for you. Oh, really? Oh, I never thought like that before. Yeah. And these books can put you at Krishna's lotus feet. These books can take you back to Godhead. Really? Yeah. These books can help you chant pure holy name. Then the next question is, what if he didn't write those books? What books would you read? Harry Potter? And you'd read some bogus Mayavad, Vedanta book, and you would have no idea what it's saying. And the only thing you'd understand is your God. And that kind of will destroy your spiritual life on the spot. So, any place you need to change how you feel about something so that you get positive motivation, then appreciation is very powerful. Now, I'm going to give you another exercise. I'm going to write this down. It's a question. Why is this important to me or for me? We're gonna take a break. We'll take a break in like 15 minutes, like halfway. So you can get up and jump up and down and go outside and get fresh air, do a headstand, whatever you need to do. So I'm not going to go 3 hours like this. So what does this mean? What did I just say? Why is this important to me or for me? I know I should. Take one of your I know I shoulds. I know I should buts. And write down 5 reasons. Right now, you may not come up with 5, but right now, take one of your I know, I should, buts, and I want you to write down why doing that is important or why avoiding doing that is important. See if you can come up with 5 reasons in a minute or two. I know I should get up early in the morning. Why is that important? Give me 5 reasons why it's important. I know I shouldn't eat pizza, chocolate cake, and ice cream at midnight. Give me 5 reasons why you should, why it's important to avoid. And if you're inclined to put any of your reasons in the chat, it's just for the benefit of all of us to see. I know I should read Prabhupada's books more. Why? That's an easy one to answer. Should chant better rounds. Why? That's easy to answer. Ah. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Oh yeah, all of you sitting in Mayapur, it's hard for you to write on the chat because there's just one screen, right? Okay. This is an exercise that you should take with you whenever you need motivation, in addition to the appreciation. I want to explain a little bit of the psychology of why this exercise works. Because inspiration comes from the why. The why behind is where the inspiration comes, right? Without a why, nobody's inspired. Without a good why, nobody's inspired, right? If you don't have good whys, you're probably not going to be inspired. Does that make sense? I remember when I became a devotee. As you know, there are 4 regulative principles. They're all pretty easy, except one of them's more difficult than the others. Well, I guess as hippies, the intoxication one wasn't so easy to give up either. But we seem to be able to give that up easier. But the sexual one is, it's it's really deeply entwined in our psyche and the ego and the whole reason we're in the material world. It's not a simple thing. It's not just like I'm going to give up intoxication. The sexual one is like, it's rooted. It's like it comes up everywhere in everything. And so when I became a devotee, before I became a devotee, I knew, I said, this is going to be the biggest of the four. And I better have some good reasons to do this. And I had lots of good reasons. Probably the best reason was my former girlfriend. That was like a nightmare. So that helped a lot. But I needed more reasons than just a bad experience. You know, like I really had to understand deeply why this is good, why I want to do this. Because it was always a challenge. And if the why wasn't strong, you could easily give up. And I look at myself and people say, how did you do this? And I could only answer and say, because the why was strong, not because I was strong. I'm going to write that down because it rhymes and it's true. I don't know if you'll remember these when we send them to you, what I was saying. Because the why was strong, not because I was strong. You like that? I think that is very important. So, whenever you're lacking motivation, ask yourself, why is it important to do this? And as many answers you can give, the better. Because in your whys is where you find your motivation. In your whys is where you're going to find the feeling, the motivation, that they go together. Now, I've got something which is a power user's version of this exercise. This is the power user's version. You want the power user's version of this exercise? This is amazing. And you can use this for anything, even if you have a job you hate. You know, what are 5 good things about this job? Clothes, food, my car, and my house. That's 4 good things about this job I hate, you know, because I wouldn't have any of those without this job. Yeah. Oh, okay. I never thought of it that way. So we have some from Gomati. Pleases Krishna and Guru, communicate with Krishna anytime. I think she's talking about japa, right? Yoga for the age, yeah. Get Krishna's love by chanting. So she gave 5 reasons why chanting is important. That's good. So those are all, if you connect with those are going to change your view of the Maha Mantra. Now here's the power user. If you go to the chat, we'll use Gomati Ganga Devi Dasi's 5. Pleases Krishna and Guru, communicate with Krishna anytime. It's the essence of everything, Yagya for the age, get Krishna's love by chanting. Now, here's the power user's insider secret to this exercise, which you could use for so many things. And this is really important if you're married, because when you're married, you go into situations where you sometimes feel like, this is hard. I want to run away to the Himalayas and never see anybody again. Sometimes that happens, or, you know, you may feel that way at work, or, you know, raising a family, or you get sick, or whatever, you want to run away. And so you have duty to do. Why is it important? Here's the power user's secret. Are you ready? Do we have a drum roll? Yes. Da-da. Trumpets. Da-da, da-da, da-da. Under each of the 5, write 5 more. So I'll give you an example. Gomati Ganga says, she's talking about japa here. You know, I need inspiration for japa. It pleases Krishna and Guru. 5 reasons pleasing Krishna and Guru is important. Then the next one, I can communicate with Krishna anytime. 5 reasons why communicating with Krishna anytime is important. It's the essence of everything. Why Why, 5 reasons, why is it important to connect with the process? That's the essence of everything. Yagya for the age, 5 reasons why the yagya for the age is important. Last, get Krishna's love by chanting. Why? Give me 5 reasons why it's important to get Krishna's love. In the words of Satchidananda Swami, my dear devotees, you may not all be good mathematicians. I will do the math for you. You have 5 reasons. If you put 5 under each of those 5, you will have 30 reasons. It seems like you'd have 25 because 5 times 5 is 25, but you already have 5. And Radhapriya already knew that, right? Because she probably... Are you good with numbers, Radhapriya? Did you know that? It was 30? Or did you think it was 25? First time I did this, I thought it was 25 because like 5 reasons. Well, you have 5 reasons, but I forgot we had 5 initially plus the 5 under the 5. So... do you think you would be motivated to do something you're not doing now if you had 30 reasons to do it? Like good reasons? What do you think? I think so, right? Don't you think? Yeah. We have, so Manjari says, 5 reasons I want to follow Prabhupada's teachings: feel closer to Krishna, give me peace, stress is relieved, give rhythm and punctuality to life, makes me strong to resist Maya. Yeah, there you go. So, and that could be the answer to number 1 by Gomati. 5 reasons to please Guru and Krishna. So, what I would like to conclude before we take a break, well, I'm going to let you ask questions because the questions could end up going for another hour and a half. But we have so much more to talk about. This was just foundational introduction. I would like to throw this thought at you, and the thought is this. I'm going to write this down. Somehow or other, become inspired. No, I'm going to write it another way. Never be uninspired. That's a thing. Never allow yourself to be uninspired about something that is important for you to do. That should be the mantra. And really, that is summing up the essence of what everything I just said in an hour and a half can be contained in that mantra. And I have adopted that philosophy, and I will explain why. It's just so important to have this philosophy. You've heard the expression, he's a sitting duck. You heard that expression? You know what a sitting duck is? It's a hunting expression. Yeah, I mean, this is a bad example because we're devotees. Okay, let's say they're shooting chalk. They're not killing them. They're just shooting chalk at the duck, just for sport. They shoot chalk. Oh, I hit the duck. So the duck's moving around, and he's hard to hit because he's moving. But if he just stops and sits there, and whatever he's doing, sunbathing or eating, yeah, he's a sitting duck. It's easy to shoot him. So Prabhupada once said, and I will write this down, and Prabhupada's not the only one who said this. This is kind of common knowledge, but Prabhupada said it in relation to Krishna consciousness. Without enthusiasm, everything is finished. Ladies and gentlemen, without enthusiasm, we may not see you next year. You may be finished. I don't know what that means, finished for you. It may be, who knows? Your Krishna consciousness is finished. If you apply that materially, it's true also. Without enthusiasm, you can't do anything. You can't go anywhere. You can't achieve anything. So when Prabhupada said that, I also had that experience, and we all have that experience. When he said that, I thought, okay, I understand this. This is clear. I cannot ever allow myself not to be enthusiastic. And then Prabhupada said something else, which is, you've probably heard me say, but I'm going to write it down because I want you to remember it. Be enthusiastic even if you are, what's the word? Not. So what did Prabhupada mean? If we put the former sentence before this, it all makes sense. Everything's finished if I lose my enthusiasm. So be enthusiastic even if you're not. Fake it somehow or other, right? So when we were young devotees, sometimes, at least I did this. I was temple president, and if I wasn't enthusiastic, nobody would be. I don't think. Or, I mean, not that nobody would be, but generally, they'll be more enthusiastic if I'm more enthusiastic. And sometimes they wouldn't be enthusiastic if I wasn't. So I would just like force myself to be enthusiastic, because I thought anything less than enthusiasm is kind of walking off the, what do they call that? The walking off the plank of the ship into the ocean. It's just, you're going to be food for sharks. You can't do it. So I always took it in my life to figure out how to be enthusiastic about everything, even when I'm not, just somehow or other. And how you will be enthusiastic, in addition to the ways I've given you, that's something I would ask you to consider in your life, in your situation. How can I be enthusiastic about this? So, I'm not writing in the public chat. Oh. Who am I writing to? Where's it going? I'm writing to Dinanath. And then Dinanath's writing. Is that how it's working? Dinanath, can you? I'll go to public. Can you put everything? Are you putting everything that I'm writing? Okay, now everyone's going to get it. So, Dinanath, if you did not put everything that you got, put it in. And I was writing to you. So the reason I'm putting all these things down is so Radhapriya can copy them. So you're all going to get them. And we have to figure out a way to get them to you. So before the end of the class, you'll have to put your contact info in the chat, and Radhapriya will then be able to send these notes to you. Just a minor detail. I send it to Dinanath instead of everybody. Yeah. Got my taxes done yesterday. It was like, there's just one little problem, just minor detail. They spelled my name wrong. Nothing big. Just only one letter, right? Yeah. So, the devil's in the details. So, what I have adopted, well, I'll give you an example of my life. Grihastha life for me was how should I say it? I'll just say challenging for me. By my nature, it wasn't so seamless. And there were periods in my Grihastha life where I was like, I don't know about this. But that was too late. You can't do that. And I knew you can't do that. So it was just like, okay, I'm not going to think like this, and I'm going to think in a way in which I will be enthusiastic and successful. So I always had to make sure that I was enthusiastic. Always, just, so I'd have to ask myself how to do this to be enthusiastic. Or I had to work, make money, doing things which were not Brahminical. It's like, well, how am I going to be enthusiastic? I had to figure, well, by doing this work, I get money, then I can buy this and that and serve Krishna in this way and, maintain my family, so many things. Somehow or other, so that's my question to you. Somehow or other, if you're not enthusiastic, ask yourself, in addition to what we've discussed, how I could feel positive about this. And I just want to add one thing to this. that there are certain things you don't have to feel positive about, and there are certain things you do. It's not good if you don't feel positive about chanting Hare Krishna. But you may not feel positive about certain services, but positive about others. That's okay, because we have our nature. And sometimes trying to be positive about something that goes totally against your nature is really impossible. You know, so it's like, I want you to be positive about doing business. And you're like, well, I'm a teacher. I don't do business. No, you have to be positive. Think positive. Affirmations. I can do business. I love business. It's not going to work because you're not a Vaishya. You're a Brahmin. And you'll do business and you'll end up in the mental hospital totally depressed because it's not your nature. And put you in a classroom and you're like, you know, you'll live to be 108. You're so happy. So we also have to understand, you know, Varna ashram, you know. Sometimes people go, they put themselves in anxiety because they want to be in one Varna or one ashram, but they think another Varna or an ashram is better, and it's not really better for them or not suited for them, and they go crazy. So I'm not saying like that, be enthusiastic about something that's totally against your nature, because that's, you know, a surefire way to end up like really unhappy. Or worse than unhappy, you know, where you require like medication to make you happy. I mean, seriously, if you try to push yourself too much against your nature and thinking, no, I have to be this way, it may backfire. So I was thinking we could take a break, but first, would you like to ask any questions so far about what we've discussed? Either you can ask it in chat, or you can actually unmute yourself and ask a question. Ideally, ask a question about what we talked about, clarification.
Hare Krishna, Mahatma Prabhu. Thank you very
Yes.
much for the class. May I ask one question about enthusiasm?
Yeah, one question. Second question, 100 rupees.
Okay. So my question, Prabhu, is that, you know, you really emphasize that we have to be enthusiastic for any like success in life, material and also spiritual. And I can really see how, yeah, I can really see that this is crucial. Now, my question is, how do we develop enthusiasm that's in the mode of goodness? Because I often associate like a lot of enthusiasm and drive with the mode of passion, but we know that on the long term, that's not sustainable. And especially when you're at that stage where you've got to, you know, kind of just fake the enthusiasm, it's often like more passion than goodness.
That's kind of what we did, kind of what we were doing in our younger years. And it was a philosophical misunderstanding to think that I should rely on passion or ignorance to get a result. So if you say, the only way I can be enthusiastic is to be in the mode of passion, I say, better not be enthusiastic then. Because, you know, if I'm in the mode of goodness, like I won't do anything. Well, not entirely true. But I definitely wouldn't recommend resorting to the mode of passion because it's not going to produce any lasting benefit for you, for the movement, for the people you minister to. So this was always a huge challenge for me and many of my godbrothers and godsisters, is that we became really good at our service. We became so good at it, we could actually do it in our sleep. And we all realized that the service we're doing is just a habit. We can do it. You know, we know what to say. We know how to distribute the books. We know how to stop people. We know how to get the donation. You know, we could be sleepwalking and doing it. And we realized that once we learned to do that, that was no longer the challenge. The challenge was doing it in Krishna consciousness. That was the hard part. And the reason that was the hard part was because it was easy to do in passion. It was easy to do in ignorance because that's where we came from. And it was hard to do it in Sattva Gun because Sattva Gun is more refined. So in answer to your question, I would say it's out of the question to try to look for inspiration in passion and ignorance. It's diametrically opposed to our philosophy to do that, to try to achieve a result by lowering your consciousness. It doesn't make sense. The only thing it does is it can give you a short-term result that you may not get in the mode of goodness, because the mode of goodness may take more work to produce the result, or the result may be slower. But the results in the mode of goodness are long-lasting, permanent. And so we saw this in our movement. A lot of shooting stars, a lot of short-lived devotees, short-lived results, and paying the price for the last 30 years, putting the pieces back together when everything crashed. So those zones, those places that were more systematic, slow and steady, they're doing much better today than the ones that were shooting stars, that were beating everybody for a while, but crashed because they weren't founded in Krishna consciousness. See, the thing is, I think you all understand this, but if you don't, you'll see it more and more as you're a devotee. Krishna consciousness is a transcendental movement, and things which aren't transcendental, they don't work in it. They can work for a while, kind of like nobody's looking or nobody notices. But because this movement is pure, it's like you have a pure body and you put something impure in it. Like for us, we don't take drugs. So, I'm sure if we just took like a few sips of alcohol, we'd all be kind of loony. Where, your brother, who's been drinking alcohol since he's like 6, he needs to drink like 12 cans of beer before even anything happens, right? So, you know what I'm saying. So it's like in something pure, there's no room for anything impure. It destroys it. Something impure, you don't notice it, right? Does that make sense, Sardi Rasa, or you want more explanation?
Yes, Prabhu, that makes a lot of sense. I suppose then we just have to really prioritize living and thinking and existing in the mode of goodness.
Yes, because it's going to seem like in many situations, it's going to seem like the mode of passion is just the way to get it done. That's the way you do it. And the mode of passion and being passionate about what you're doing are two different things. So I'm not saying you're not enthusiastic. I'm very passionate about teaching. I'm very passionate about book distribution. I'm very passionate about Gurukul. It doesn't mean you're in a mode of passion. It just means you're dedicated, you're enthusiastic, you want to make it happen. That's totally different. But when you resort to passionate activities, then your motives start changing. You become motivated to do this because you'll get something financially, recognition, some position, whatever. You'll get to impress people. You'll get something from other people because you can impress them. You'll be known in ISKCON. If you cut a few corners, you can, just compromise a few principles here and there. You can get it done faster. That's what we're talking about. There's no place for that. That will destroy us. If we live that way, it'll destroy us. And I can only say that because we lived that way as younger devotees, and it destroyed us. It didn't work. It produced temporary benefits. It's like, drink caffeine. You think you have energy. You feel, so much energy. Well, if you have to drink caffeine to get energy, you're not strong. You're not healthy. And it's better, you get healthy and get energy from healthy things. That's real energy. Caffeine is artificial, right? So it's a little bit like that. So the temptation is to go to those modes because they're easier to get things done in, and we're more inclined to those modes. And I'll tell you a story. Sardiya. This is a beautiful story. Everybody want to hear a story? It's one of my favorite stories about book distribution. So I first came to the movement in 1969, and in January of 1970, it's December of 69, I went back to home and told my parents I'm going to be a devotee. And then the end of December, beginning of January, went back to Berkeley where I was going to school and got rid of my things in the next few weeks and moved into the temple. So my experience with those early days of Krishna consciousness was we would go out dressed as devotees. That's just what we did. And we would just tell people, this is who we are. We're Hare Krishnas. This is Bhakti. Krishna's God. We're his servant. And you'll be happy if you serve him. And that's just what we said. And then we started going house to house. And usually just with magazines. Eventually we had Krishna books, maybe in 1972, 71, 72. We started going out with Krishna books, and we just knock on people's doors, Hare Krishna, you either like Hare Krishna or you don't, because you're seeing this person with tilak and shaved head and dhoti, and if they liked it, great, and so we would talk to them and just give them the philosophy straight. It was very, very blissful. And so around 1972, some devotees developed new ways of distributing books. And their way of distributing books included not wearing dhoti, sometimes, and sometimes not wearing dhoti, sorry, and not saying much about the book. Actually saying very little, just having what we call mantras, just a few lines. And then asking for donations, not for the book, but for something like we help kids off drugs, can you give a donation? So it started to shift. And it really alienated me. I didn't like it. It was just like, this is not right. It just doesn't feel right at all. And that ramped up itself more and more to the point where nobody was wearing devotional dress anymore. And everybody was just saying things like, George Harrison and concert in Bangladesh, and we're feeding kids in Bangladesh, And the problem was the devotees that were doing this were distributing a lot of books, so they were getting glorified. So indirectly, we were glorifying the use of the mode of passion. And some of the tactics were not honest. Say, give a donation, whatever you like to give, and they go for their wallet and say, do you have a larger bill? I could give you change. And they'd say, okay. I'd say, okay, I'll give you $3, and they give you 20, and you'd give them back like 10 and say, most people, well, first, if you were bold, you say, well, a lot of people are giving 20. Can we just leave it at that? And they're like, that doesn't feel good, right? Because you just said you're giving 3. And they go, no, I'm sorry, I can't. I'll give you 5. And then they give them back like 10. Say, could you just leave 10? That'd be really cool. And the really bolder devotees, the ones roughest around the edges, would just give them 10 and go, thanks a lot. Can you give 10? That really helped. Thanks a lot. And just walk away. And the guy's just sitting there, right? So I'm looking at this going, no way, I can't do this. This is not for me. This is wrong. And they're the ones distributing the most books. So we had a godbrother. He got trained up in this practice. And you know what he told me? He said, when they trained him up, I told myself, I'm not going to do any of that. That does not. And he figured out how to distribute without doing any of that. But here's my story. He was rare. Nobody could actually figure out how to distribute books because it was just like, he impressed people so much. He was so straightforward. And everybody would take books. But here was the highlight of that. There was I don't know if you're all aware of this, but in the late 70s or so, there was a man named Jim Jones, and he had a religious leader that had a community of people who he got to take cyanide, I believe, put cyanide in Kool-Aid and kill themselves. And so that's when all the anti-cult stuff started hitting the scene, and all the new religious movements were band together as cults. And it became so bad that all those techniques that the devotees were doing, hey, excuse me, sir, where are you coming in from? Like, get out of here, you cult. Like, they or they'd stop and they go, oh, Hare Krishna, it's like, it was so bad. So the biggest book distributor explained, this Pragosh Prabhu, he explained that everything they used to do didn't work because now cults were on everyone's mind. Krishna cult, the group called the Mooney cult. This is another group, Guru Maharaji. He said he was an incarnation of Krishna, and there was so many, and they were all out there, And so the devotee said, the cult consciousness was so strong that the only possible way that I could distribute a book was I'd have to explain to people. I said, no, it's not a cult. This is Krishna Bhakti. It comes from India. It's got this tradition. Look at what the scholars are saying. He said, the only way I could distribute a book is I have to preach directly. And I think it was 79 or something, the whole Sankirtan movement shifted from that day. Because the passionate approach, it was over. It couldn't work. It really wasn't working. It was really destroying our public image, horribly. It was working against us, but it was getting the books out. But underneath, the foundation was cracking. And then Krishna just said, okay, that's enough. And now that didn't even work anymore. And the only thing that worked was preaching. And that's basically how devotees do it now. And many devotees go out in dhotis and like that. So that's our experience over time. We saw that the passion it doesn't work. It crashes. It doesn't sustain. And what sustains over the long run is what's most sattvic. So that's just to underscore my original statement was, don't ever think that resorting to passion and ignorance in spreading Krishna consciousness is ever the right way to do it. It's always the wrong way. And it's tempting because it's the carrot in front of you. Well, if we just do this, we'll get this. Now, there were rare situations where Prabhupada allowed certain things in emergencies because temple was going to be closed or something like that. But 99.9% of the time, no. And then Prabhupada used to say, why are you making up these stories that you're sending money to Bangladesh if you're not? Why are you saying all these things? I never said anything. He said, you just glorify Krishna. He said, then you could say anything you want because Krishna's unlimited, but all these other stories. And so that's what we learn to do. So that's my experience. So, any other questions? So, Kamaniya says, my very first experience with a devotee. Oh, we have another question. I'll get to yours, Parananda. Encounter with a devotee was with a book distributed on Oxford Street in London. I was around 20 years old. I left the encounter with a bad taste in my mouth because I felt the devotee had been dishonest. Until she met me and everything was fine, right? First, he made the book seem like a gift. Then once it was in my hands, he asked for a donation. In my immaturity, I left thinking that the Hare Krishnas were dishonest. Yeah. You're not the only one who thought like that. Yeah. I would tell people, we don't charge for the books. We ask for donations, help with the printing, and you don't have to give a donation if you don't want to. It's totally up to you, up to generosity and kindness of your own heart, which is kind of like saying, if you want to be a miser, that's like, what can I do? But I didn't say that, but that's kind of how it came across. I go, no, I'll give it. I don't want, They were thinking like, no, I don't want to be a miser. I want to give you something. Kamaniya. I went to South Africa. In South Africa, the people were so polite. You would give them a book and you would ask for a donation and they would say, only with pleasure. Could you give it a note? Can you give a donation? Only with pleasure. where in America, basically, they'd spit on you when you'd say that. So that was quite a culture shock for me. Then sometimes they look for their money, and then they'd say, I'm sorry, I don't actually have any money, because this was before the credit card days. And I'd say, well, you could take the book, we'll meet you some other time. He goes, no. And they'd all say, no, I can't take the book if I can't give you any money. And they like look through their purse and they try to find something. That was the culture there, right? And in America, you ask for a donation and they'd say, I can't give anything. And you say, well, we try to get a little something. And they say, you gave me the book, right? You said it's not for donation. I'm taking the book. And they'd walk away. It was complete, it was like, and when I was in South Africa, I was like, I'm never leaving here. This is book distribution heaven. I don't want to go anywhere else. I love these people. This is a true story. That's what it was like. Okay, so Paramananda has a question. He's asking on Facebook, how to maintain enthusiasm, sattva-guna, and develop transcendental enthusiasm. One thing I think is a problem. Well, I'll just give you my analysis of the problem. This is a big problem. So if you're not awake, on the count of 3, wake up, because this is like really important. Ek, do, tin, jiv jago. Okay. Raise your hand if you're not awake. Okay, the person sitting next to you is not awake. Slap them. Wake them up. I would look at your question again, because I had a thought, which I forgot. Animate sattva-guna and develop transcendental enthusiasm. Like he's saying, how to develop enthusiasm that's more real. This is what I've noticed. You probably noticed this also, but maybe I can articulate it in a way that will maybe go deeper. When you come to Krishna consciousness, were you enthusiastic? I'm sure you were. Were you blissful? I'm sure you were, right? Especially with halava. For us, halava in the old days, that was it. So, when you first become a devotee, everything is like amazing. And enthusiasm, it's just so natural because you're getting out of the material world. And what is happening, I believe, is 2 things. I believe there's a contrast between your former life and your bhakti life, and that Mahaprabhu and Prabhupada are giving you bonus mercy points to get in the game, like handicap points, like here's some, you go to Las Vegas, they give you some free tokens, just so you'll start gambling and, the slot machines, and you don't win anything or you win a few dollars or you get all excited, so you buy tokens. So Mahaprabhu gives you mercy to get you in the game so it's easy because, you would think that those first few weeks, few months as a devotee would be really impossible to make that transition, going from material life to spiritual life. And most of us made that transition seamlessly. It was like, how did that happen? And all of a sudden, we're in dhotis, shaved up, jumping up and down like popcorn on the street, wearing diapers. And we're asking ourselves, what happened? Or more specifically, how? How did that happen? I was just like a college student with long hair, having fun, playing rock and roll music, getting high, and, different girlfriend every month. Now I'm jumping up and down on the street wearing a diaper, and I shaved my head. And I got a ponytail. The worst thing, I got a ponytail in the back. And no hippie had shaved head. That was like, for a hippie to shave their head, it was like, it doesn't get any worse than that. And like, how did that happen? How is that possible? And we look back and we go, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. So how did it happen? I was like, in a lot of mercy. Definitely a lot of mercy. Mahaprabhu just goes, here's buckets of mercy on you. And now you can do this. And, and you're doing it. And it's like really easy. I remember being a devotee, doing all these austerities. I was like so easy. It was so happy. It was just like we were so happy. Go out, chant all day and just like sleep on the floor, get up in 5-6 hours. It was easy. No problem. No illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, no meeting. You know, we did it our whole life. And now, you know, we were even doing it, some of us, right, you know, right to a week before we move in the temple, no problem. The problem is what happens after. That here is where I see the big problem. And this problem is really big. It's pervasive, and it is, I think, the major cause of people either leaving Krishna consciousness or having trouble. And I'll tell you what it is next week. Okay, so now we'll take a break. Is that okay? So I was just trying to keep you awake. We were supposed to take a break, but you know, you got me all excited with your questions. So here's the problem. And I'm glad you brought this up, Paranananda, because I actually wanted to talk about this. I've been thinking about this a lot. It's obviously a huge concern that a large percentage of devotees don't remain in Krishna consciousness. A large percentage of devotees do not do well in Krishna consciousness after that initial 5-10 years. It's a huge concern, right? Because, you know, as a teacher, as a preacher, as a spiritual master, you know, the question is like, well, what am I doing if all the students I have are going to like disappear in 5 years? You know, they're all like, oh, this is so wonderful. And 5 years later, you know, their life changes. They get married to the wrong girl, the wrong guy, get the wrong job, go to the wrong university, move to the wrong country, get up on the wrong side of the bed, and it's like, it's over, right? So I think that's part of your question, Parananda, because when all, you know, I think the real question is not how to remain enthusiastic, it's how to remain enthusiastic when all that other stuff happens. Because what I'm seeing just from the vantage point of a preacher is that a devotee does well, everything is good, and something happens in their life, and all of a sudden, I don't hear from them anymore. And when I finally hear from them, it's one of those letters that kind of feels like, not doing too good. You know, like what happened? Who beat you up? You know, it's like the letter, like they're writing on the ground and they've been beat up and they're in their last breath. And like, you know, when I last saw them, they were like jumping up and down and, you know, in kirtan and like happy and, you know. So my analysis of this is that Mahaprabhu lets us go in the beginning. He lets us go very deeply, very quickly, way beyond maybe what we really should have according to, you know, it's like you go to the gym and you work out for 5 minutes and you come home with like huge muscles. Like, what happened to you? Oh, it's this little pill here. You know, I lifted, you know, 20 pounds 3 times and I look like Hercules. You know, it's not supposed to happen like that. So I see that with Mahaprabhu's mercy, with Prabhupada's mercy, we advance very quickly. Like you weren't supposed to be that advanced, but there's all this mercy. But at some point, that mercy is like you need to be churning that mercy yourself. It's like your father's given you all this money, but at some point, he's like he wants you to do something with it and invest it. It's going to stop. And if you haven't invested it properly, you're messed up because it's the funds aren't coming anymore and you didn't utilize it. So the funds, so what do we see? We see a lot of devotees who I'm just being honest, and it's not a criticism, who really don't like japa, and that's putting it mildly. They actually hate it. It's like if they didn't have to chant, if their guru said they didn't have to chant, they wouldn't. They would just go, thank God I don't have to chant. I don't like it. I'll do kirtan, but there'd be lots and lots of devotees like that. Do you agree? If they were given that option, a lot of you, right? There's lots and lots of devotees who don't like reading Prabhupada's books, right? There's lots and lots of devotees who don't like lots and lots of other devotees. There's lots and lots of devotees who've got personal issues that make it hard to like a lot of other devotees. Isn't it? And so your father has given you the investment. and you realize, okay, this is like bonus money, but I have to invest this money. I have to do something with it because it's going to run out. And if I don't invest it, I'm not going to get anything anymore. That's what I see happening to devotees. It's like they're floating, they're going through the initial bliss period, or whatever you want to call it, the initial, dawn that they're getting. But at some point, you have to create it yourself through good chanting, through right mentality, through studying well Prabhupada's books, through getting good association and so forth. And when you stop doing that in that third year, fourth year, seventh year like that, if you're not doing that enough, doubts start coming, you lose your taste. What happens when you lose your taste? You get interested in other things because you want to, get some taste from something. So you find it in other things. Plenty of distractions on your phone here and there, isn't it? So what I'm seeing is there's like I grew up surfing. So if I took you to the ocean and I said, surfing is fun, and then, you go out there and you're just getting like pushed around by the waves and you're like, this is not fun. I feel like I'm on a washing machine here. This is like hell, I'll say, no. Come out with me. You don't realize what you're doing. So I get you out there and then a wave comes and I push the board and you're on the wave and you like ride the wave in. You just lay on the board. You don't even stand up. You ride the wave in and you come back. You go, wow, that was really fun. I go, I told you it was fun. It's just you didn't know how to do it. So I see a lot of that happening with devotees. It's like they're not doing Krishna consciousness well. They're not going deeply enough. So they're just getting pushed around by the waves and they don't realize, no, this austerity that's difficult for you is actually fun. It's actually purifying. What's in Prabhupada's books is actually golden. It's nectar. You just got to take the wrapper off. That's why you're not tasting it. There's a wrap. It's like eating a sweet ball with a wrapper on it. Your japa, there's a wrapper on your japa. There's a wrapper on your Bhagavatam. There's a wrapper on your association. Things like that. So then what's happening is they're not getting Krishna consciousness because there's a certain threshold you have to go to taste it and to be safe. And if you're above that threshold, then you're not in the ocean anymore. You've got to get in the ocean of devotion. So it's like we used to say, nectar hounds. You have to be a nectar hound. You have to be searching for nectar, hounding it, finding it. So that's the idea. And I don't think I don't think we should think this is optional. It's like, it's not. You will notice in your own life, if you're not chanting properly, if you're not reading Prabhupada's books, it will show up in all kinds of interesting ways in your life, interesting ideas you have, interesting attitudes, misunderstandings, compromises, which you don't realize are compromises. You'll be out of alignment. Your life will not be demonstrating Krishna consciousness. You won't even notice it. So this is the challenge. And then what happens, as I said before, if you're not in the ocean deeply enough, then when you get hit, you don't have like enough foundation to stand on. You get hit and you don't know how to recover because you're weak. If you're a weak boxer and you get hit, you're out. And so you're leaving yourself liable. That's just what I've observed. And I've always tried in my life to never put myself in a position where Maya could actually have an effect if she punches me. Maya's always going to punch us, but I always try to put myself in a position where the punches can't do anything. But if you're not sufficiently in the ocean, the punches can do a lot. And then you get punched, and then you don't have the energy to fight Maya. That's the problem. So my concern for devotees is, not that this one class fires you up for the next 3 days, but the next 50 years, because most of you are, younger. You're going to be around 30, 40, 50 years. Example, how Maya hits you, get married. Take sannyas, get hit, you take sannyas, new ashram. All of a sudden, all the devotees are bowing down to you. You're being honored. Everyone thinks you're like more than you are. Become a guru, honored, glorified. Graduate, go into university from high school, the whole new world of Maya. Go into the workplace from university, whole new world of Maya. Move to another city, move to another country, get another job. Anything can throw you off your game when the externals change. And the greater the change. You know, I got this new job, 70 hours a week. That ought to throw you off your game. Why'd you take the job in the first place? That was a bad choice. Maybe you had no choice. Okay, how are you going to deal with that? So it's like every situation you're in, you have to ask yourself, how am I going to deal with this situation? Because this can throw me off. Even for some devotees, going to Mayapur became difficult. Like there are many, many families that did not stay in Mayapur. They couldn't do it. Or just going to India. You know, some devotees went to India. That was like, they almost gave up Krishna consciousness for different reasons. So, or you go to a temple and things are really bad and, you know, somebody's mistreating somebody and they're sweep it under the rug or this or that, or throws you off your game. You get discouraged. I'm a part of a movement and this is going on. It's like anything can do it. You read something Prabhupada said and you go, oh my God, he said that. That's not true. How could he say that? Or that seems racist. And your faith is like, you know, it's like, it's everywhere. You can get thrown off by anything at any time. One big argument with your spouse, that can do it also. What if your guru tells you something that freaks you out completely? You say, I hope my guru never asks me this, and the next day he asks you this. And he says, you have to do this. And you're like, I can't do it. You have to. I'm telling you, you have to. I don't want to talk to you unless you do it. You know, Prabhupada said that to disciples. If you don't get this done, don't talk to me. You're finished. Whoa. So Prabhupada chastises you. Your guru chastises you. That could be it. It could be over if you don't know how to take it. So I don't think there's any shortage of things that can throw you off. And I think Maya will use all of them. And that's why I see there's this threshold of depth. If you're deep enough in Krishna consciousness because of your daily practice, you don't have to worry. Nothing can throw you off, no matter how bad it is, because you have too much Krishna consciousness. But if your rounds are bad, I mean, I'm just going to be honest here, and this is not as much for me as it is for everybody. If your rounds are bad, you're not going to really make much advancement, if any advancement. You're just going to stay in the same, or you'll just go down. You'll be, you know, if your rounds aren't good, 10 years from now, you'll probably be worse devotee than you are now. You may still look like a devotee, but internally, you may have learned some things, but practically in your life, it's not going to really show up. You can't buck the system. You can't cheat the system. You can't chant bad rounds, not read Prabhupada's books, offend devotees, and think, you're going to advance. It's impossible. It doesn't work that way. And if you think that way, that means Maya has bamboozled you, and that's why you continue to do what you're doing, because you don't know, you can't tell that you're not Krishna conscious. Of course, you make up an excuse. Oh, I'm fallen, I'm this, I'm that. Yeah, that's Maya making up the excuse for you. So that's the problem. I was just preparing, we're doing this japa class tomorrow. And I had just prepared a few weeks ago this online japa course. So I was really meditating on japa, and I was up early in the morning chanting and just thinking about what chanting is and how I had just heard, I don't know, it was Janani Vas or someone said that, when you look at the deity and you chant the holy name, if your chanting is good, you realize the holy name is the deity is the holy name. You'll see it the same, It's like, well, wouldn't that be nice when you chant? That's what chanting is. That's what's supposed to happen when you chant. So I was chanting and meditating on different things that I teach students to do when they chant and applying them. And that's why I was thinking. I've had this thought before, but I was thinking this morning. It's like so many devotees, they're not chanting well. And you can only go on so long. And you can say things, or Prabhupada said, well, even if you chant offensively, you still eventually you can make advancement. Yeah, well, how long is eventually? How many hundreds of lifetimes is eventually? And just with the record, the track record of how many people leave Krishna consciousness, and even the track record of how many people stay and don't do well, then, japa is really one of the places to look. Prabhupada's books is one of the places to look. And good sangha is one of the places to look. And where that's deficient on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're below 5 in any of those, you're in trouble. You're just not going to go very far. And if something better comes along, some, sense gratification, you might just go for it. And go, well, I tried Krishna consciousness, I really can't do it. So, just get a big house and, have a lot of kids and, eat a lot of ice cream. And, what else can I do? And we'll go to Janmashtami and Ram Navami and, have kirtan, once a week, So a lot of devotees, that's their life. That's what it becomes. So the other way to answer this question, or another aspect of answering this question, is, are you okay with that? Are you okay with the once a week kirtan, some principles, some rounds, whatever? Is that the lifestyle you're okay with? Because if you are, that's where that's where you're going to end up. But if you're not okay with it, you won't end up there. So this is really, like, what do you want, This is sometimes we have to ask ourselves this question: what do I actually want? Because if I actually want Krishna consciousness, good, you want it. Okay, what are you doing to manifest that? And then you do it, and then you'll get it. And then you'll understand this japa, this bhagavatam, this kirtan, this sangha. This is like essential. I have to learn how to do this really well. This is so important. If I don't, then Maya's going to slap me and I'm going to get caught. I can guarantee it. It's like, there's not that I can guarantee it, Krishna guarantees it. Daiviyesha gunamai. You have to have a decent level of sadhana. You can't go on. For a few years, yeah, you'll get mercy, you're young devotee, Krishna, but at some point, it's like, Krishna's going to go, okay, what are you made of? Are you a man or are you a mouse? Let's see what you're made of. And then he's going to go slap, 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 lap. You're going to get up and fight, or what are you going to do? So that's going to happen. And so if we are willing to pay the price and we're determined, we'll be fine. I mean, personally, I don't like Maya, so I don't like it when she tries to get me, so I usually just run away, get behind Krishna, and then she goes away. That's my policy. So that's what I recommend you do. I think there was another question. Did Krishna Karshini have a question? Or it came later. I have to. This Zoom chat box is awkward because sometimes I could miss. Okay. American culture, yeah, it should be made illegal, right? Sardiya is shocked by Americans. Prabhu, you were indeed a part of opening my heart to the Gaudiya Vaishnavas when I met you at Nanda Ashram. Thank you. Divine arrangement. Meant to be, right? My intro, Kamini says, our intro to Bhakti was through Shamadas and his association. Give examples of how people have been hit before. So Krishna Karshani said at the beginning of the class that understanding different things intellectually is not enough. We apply it in life. We need realization. What do we need to come to intellectual understanding? Seems to be challenging. I don't think you were here in the beginning. I think that was the beginning of the talk was about that. Were you here in the beginning or no? You came later? That was the beginning. Of course, you know, when all else fails, just do it. You know, yeah, I'm waiting to get the realization. I don't feel like doing it. I'm waiting to get the feeling. You might be waiting a few kalpas. Sometimes you just have to do it. I found, I was explaining this before, but maybe not as clearly as I could explain it. I found that there has to be a sufficient degree of self-awareness to even know where you stand. And for there to be self-awareness, as we've talked about before, for there to be self-awareness, there has to be a sufficient reduction of false ego. Like, I have a false ego machine. I put it to your heart, and it shrinks your false ego, like, you know, because it's like a cancer. It shrinks it. Anybody interested in that? The false ego shrink, and then you'll become humble. You'll become like this really humble, submissive, chaste, quiet. Yeah, you may have second thoughts about this. Well, you don't have to be quiet. You can still be noisy, but you'll be more humble. So the false ego has a very difficult time objectifying our faults. The false ego, as long as we don't have low self-esteem, the false ego will usually paint a picture of ourselves that's not realistic, that's like way better than it is. It doesn't, like, you know, this is reality, and the false ego paints a picture of something that's not real. So if we're going to be able to practice what we understand, it's going to be impossible to come to that level if we can't even come to the level of acknowledging that we're not even doing it in the first place, which in and of itself is not always so easy, because a lot of times we think we are when we're not. Isn't it? And if I mean, you go back to Godhead and Krishna pulls out the video footage on you, you know, all these things you did. Like, could you imagine? You'd have to look at yourself. So, Krishna Karshani and everybody, what I would like you to do today is, as many times as possible during the day, during this next week or month, imagine there's a video camera on you that's going to be sent. Well, Krishna already knows. It's going to be sent to your guru. And catch yourself. Try to catch yourself doing or saying something, or just acting, and, you know, just maybe just being a slob, or just saying something really stupid, or not being so nice, or whatever. Just try to catch yourself and think, whoop, I hope that's not on video, because if it is, that's going to be embarrassing. That's going to show me who I am. I do that all the time. I catch myself. A lot of times I'll stop myself. I go, oh, this is not good for video. This will not look good on video. Or I'll just do something and I'll go, did I just do that? And a lot of, you're married, Krishna Karshani, so you know your husband says, you always do this. And you say, I never do that. That's because we're not self-aware. And he's like, yeah, you do it all the time. He goes, I never do that. When did I ever do that? It was like 3 minutes ago. No, I didn't. And then 3 minutes before that. No, I didn't. And 3 minutes before that. You're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. You ever gone through that? Dinanath, you ever gone through that one? Yeah. Your wife can see it, but you can't, or you can see her, she can't. So the video moment, let's write that in the chat, video moment. The video moment was just a technique that I used to catch myself, to try to ensure that I would be happy that everything on the video, if it went to Prabhupada, I'd be like, fine, send it. No problem. That was like a conscious awareness. Like, okay, I'm going to get videos of all of you for the last 6 months, and I'm going to spend a lot of time looking at those videos. Are you okay with that? Is there anything you'd like to edit out of that video before you send it? Prabhu, if I edit it out, there won't be anything on the video. Right? So that's one way to think about it, to get some kind of objectivity on yourself, you know, just like you're acting in a certain way, and just think, okay, if this is on video and I'm looking at what I just did, and then you can start to say, okay, this isn't good. And I may not have noticed that if I didn't think that way. So I train myself to start thinking, to start being more self-aware. And as I became more self-aware, then I began to understand that learning and practicing are are so distinct in some senses. And I realized the ego, and we've talked about this before, but I think it's worth talking about again because it's just a reality. The ego, it already has a filter, so it already sees things a certain way. So how you think of yourself filters all your actions. So if you think you're this kind of person, whether it's good or bad, like if you have low self-esteem, you do all these great things and it goes through this filter of, I'm bad. Everything I do is bad. I'm stupid. I'm useless. That's low self-esteem. And arrogance is like, you do all kinds of horrible things. Everything I do is great. I never make any mistakes. Well, I made one mistake once. What was that? Well, I thought I made a mistake, but I didn't. That was the only mistake I made. You know, that's arrogance. That's the arrogant side, right? It's all a filter. So we want to come to this point where there's no filter, where we can actually see where we're lacking honestly. And then at least at that point we can understand, I am not acting, I'm not getting to this point of acting on what I know. And then the whole first part of the lecture, we talked about getting to the point of feeling, you know, because a lot of the problems that we have is just there's no feeling. I don't feel like acting that way. I think you can relate to that. Tanya says, there was a wonderful experiment in which mirrors were placed in front of students during exams. Students tended to cheat much less when they could see themselves in the mirror. Oh, yeah. Okay. Everyone, get mirrors. Surround yourself with mirrors. Could be a nightmare, right? So the idea that we have to drop the idea that I have a conception of myself being a certain way and actually try to understand how I really am. That works, that cures arrogance and it cures low self-esteem. It cures both problems. Because most people are either on the arrogant side or the low self-esteem side. Few people actually understand what they're like. They always think they're better or they think they're worse. You know. Oh, how was that class? Oh, it was a horrible class. I'm a terrible class giver. And everyone's thinking, that was the best class I ever heard. How did that happen? Or the other one, that was the greatest class ever given in the universe. Oh, that class was so boring. You know, you give boring classes. So why these things? Because the filters we wear, which prevent us from seeing. So the next question you have to ask yourself is, how do you want to be? Like, what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of devotee do you want to be? What is your ideal? Who is your hero? And then that needs to be very clear for you, because I think a lot of the problems we have in living the wisdom of Bhakti, head and heart, is we don't even know what our ideal is. We don't even know how we want to be. Or we have some crazy idea of how we want to be. You know, we want to be some dictator, and we think that's Krishna consciousness. You know, tell everybody what to do. I'll be the temple president. Tell everyone what to do. That's Krishna consciousness. So You want to be really clear about, well, what is it? How do you want to be? What kind of person do you want to be? Because when you're clear about the kind of person you want to be, it's a lot easier to see when you're not like that. If you're very clear, like, I never want to mistreat a devotee. I never want to get upset with a devotee. I never want to become angry with the devotee. And that is 100% clear. It's your goal. As soon as you become upset, angry, you're going to be aware of it. But if that is not clear, you can get angry and just, they deserve it. They deserve it. They asked for it. They got it. And that's how you'll see it. You'll always have, 108 excuses to do anything. Isn't it? Yeah, so heroes are good. What would Jesus do? What would Prabhupada do? What would your hero do? In this situation, what would my hero do? How would they act? Very important. So these are all things that I've discovered in my life that are helpful. It's, also, Krishna Karshani, if you have the ideal, that's where the impetus comes. Because now I have this ideal. This is I'm really clear on this is the kind of person I want to be. This is the kind of devotee I want to be. Now I have an impetus to work on it, to act that way. Right? But if you don't even know, then where's the impetus going to come from? I wanted to do an exercise. We've gone so far, I think I can deborize you, unborize you. That's not a word. Debore you. I want to ask you a question. This is kind of a la the last retreat we did. Maybe we asked this question, but I want to ask it now because I think it'll be relevant. I would like you to write down something you just don't want to deal with. You don't even want to think about it. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to you wish it did not exist. I want you to write it down, as painful as it is. Just has to be one thing. You don't have to pick the worst thing, but I guess if you don't want to deal with it, it's all bad. And after you write it down, then the next question, which is really the question I want to ask you, is why don't you want to deal with it? And just be honest. You don't have to put this on chat if you don't want to. And just be honest. Why are you resisting this? What it is and why. And then we'll talk a little bit about this. Because this is extremely important for us. In head to heart, sometimes we don't even want to get it in the head. What to speak of head to heart? We block it out of the head. And definitely block it out of the heart. We put a lock on the door to the heart. This isn't going in my heart. Or it got in the heart and we put another lock on it so we pretend it's not there. So why do we do that? That's the question. What it is and why. Yeah. Past failure, you want to forget about? And then Priya, why? Oh. I'm going to say something that some of you know because I've told you before. And this will even make you more depressed than the question I asked you. But this can be extremely healing. It's interesting, and I think you probably know this. It's interesting to note, and it's important to note, that when we resist an issue, for whatever reason we resist it, quite often, if not always, it's probably the most important issue for us to deal with, but obviously the most difficult, which is why we resist it, or the most painful, fearful, uncomfortable. So I've always found that to be an important lesson in self-reflection. Is like to ask myself, what am I resisting, and then why? And there's usually something connected there because I'm resisting it. It's connected to something. And I think the obvious problem that we all should understand, or we do understand, is that it doesn't go away by neglecting it, generally. And if it goes away by neglecting it, it probably didn't go away. It just, you can't find it, but it's there. And it's having its effect. So part of the process of alignment is to muster up the strength and determination to be able to face what we have to face. And I can say from my own experience, because I'm older than most of you, or maybe older than all of you, maybe, of course, we're all eternal, but in this life, because I've had more years to live, I can say one of the maybe greatest regrets that I've had is not dealing with the resistances earlier. And one of the greatest, I don't know if you'd call it victories, greatest, let's just say one of the greatest things I've done is dealing with them. And the only regret once dealing with them is, why didn't I deal with them sooner? And here's the thing. Once you deal with one, it's easier to deal with the next one, because you finally learned emotionally how to confront it, how to face it. And once you do that, it's always easier than you think. It's always, well, let me offer you this. It's always more painful in the long run to avoid it. Way more painful. It's just like a tooth that needs to be pulled. Always way more painful to not pull it. And pull it, maybe more painful, but that's only a minute, and then it's over. But if you don't pull it, it's painful forever. Maybe slightly less than the pulling. But there's a lot of psychology behind resistance. It goes very deep, and it's layered. But to make a long story short, I would just encourage you, there's nothing you can't face. And if it's going to help you in your Krishna consciousness, then we have to go to the principle, everything favorable, face it, everything not favorable, reject it. And if you need help facing it from others who can guide you, then take that guidance. But I think also, of course, I'm not a woman, so it may be processed differently, but my feeling was maybe even a bigger problem than the problem I'm resisting is the resistance itself. That's maybe the biggest problem. Not the specific thing I'm resisting, but that's just I'm resisting. What we find is there's a lot of emotional energy that gets dissolved when you face it. And some of the facing is, it's, you know, some of it's just false ego, just admitting that I made a mistake, that I don't want to admit it to the degree that I made it. And that could be devastating also, just for the false ego, for your reputation and like that. But when you can be honest about what happened and real about what happened, it relieves so much. The other thing that I'm worried about also, and I'm not an expert in this field, but I've seen enough of this, and we've all heard about it, and we all know this, that this unresolved emotional energy can be very, very bad for your health, and it can cause all kinds of health issues. And I know that being a devotee sometimes is there's so much at stake in being a devotee. You know, your connection with Krishna, your connection with Prabhupada, your connection with your guru, the vows you've made, the commitments, the shame that can go with failing, the guilt that can go with failing, the failing not only your guru, but then you're failing yourself. And it's just, you know, there's like so much there. And you've all heard me talk about this a lot, and sometimes I'll talk about it in a way that seems almost like, well, is that our philosophy? It seems like I'm letting you all off the hook a little bit. But it's just that it's not Prabhupada's mood to make people feel guilty. And there's so many reasons to feel guilty if you have a guilty conscience, to the point where you just don't want to deal with it or can't deal with it. And then that it harms you spiritually, harms you emotionally, it harms your relationships, it harms you physically. And I look at ISKCON and I think, well, is this what's going to happen to 30% of the people who come to ISKCON? They're going to get cancer after joining ISKCON because they, you know, are traumatized by certain things and in ISKCON. And then, you know, I know book distributors are traumatized on book distribution. Seriously. They were like, they were introverts that were forced and pushed out and had to be heavy, and it was really, really hard for them. And they had to lie, or they were told to, you know, tell little white lies. You know, and so a lot of healing is required. And to heal, we have to talk about it. Rambaru has her groups, and from what I heard, they're fantastic, and that they are, in her words, healing is much easier in groups, where we can all talk about it. So she's offered that facility for any of you who need that to face your resistances. But I would encourage you to do it. If you need her help or others, I would encourage you to do it. In the long run, it's going to help you tremendously. Yeah, so we have something we're resisting, and then we're asking ourselves the question, why? That is a very big question. That's where we can start to untangle. Priya says trust, Krishna family issues, Kamaniya, past traumas. I think she said that. No? Did I miss that? I thought. Oh, maybe that was a private message. Sorry about that. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Trust traumas. Yeah. Yeah, painful. So, yeah, Corona Care. There's the info. The thing is, the other thing that really concerns me, I'm sure it concerns Rambaru, which is why she's doing this, is in addition to devotees having to navigate the whole spiritual experience, you know, aside from any other problems they had before they were devotees, you know, psychologically, these unhealthy these things that we're dealing with, they can have negative impacts on our spiritual life. And that's really unfortunate because our spiritual life is so valuable. So the way I look at it is that if something is going to help us spiritually, we want to be in the consciousness that no matter what it is, if it's going to help us spiritually, we're going to do it no matter how painful it is. And it'll always be beneficial in the long run. The pain will be short-lived, but in the long run, it'll be beneficial. So that's my suggestion. If it's difficult, here's another meditation. I didn't give you this meditation, but here's another meditation that can help you, inspire you. It's a negative way to inspire you, but I found it very effective. And that is to look into the future. Look at your life now. Look into the future. Look at what you're doing. Look at what you're not doing. Look at what you're resisting, what you're running away from. Looking what all your I know I should buts. And then just taking that into the future and meditate on how that will be affecting you in your life over time. And then look at solutions. And if you make that solution, how will that affect you over time? And that's a powerful meditation. It's actually a bit scary. I do these meditations with managers also. If you're doing everything the way you're doing in your temple, what will it look like in 50 years? If a temple's not managed well, that's a very scary thought. And it's very sobering. Oh, if we continue doing this, it's not going to be good. We're going to have 10 problems unsolved, but they'll be 10 times worse than they are now. And we should have done so many projects, and we're not going to do them. They're essential projects. So that shakes them up a bit and motivates them. And so the same way we can look at our life and say, well, if it just goes this way, if you're avoiding dealing with this, if you're making an excuse for this, if you're saying, I could do this, but I'm too weak or whatever, all right. That's what you say, but I just ask you, what's that going to look like if you live your life out like that? And I think the answer becomes obvious. Not pretty. Not what I want. And so that can be a huge impetus because a lot of us we're in this situation where we need to move to the next level and we don't know how to get there. And looking at the future and looking at the ramifications of both the positive and negative, then voice is too low by Indian standards. According to my mixer, it's too loud. Horrible, everybody! Hare Krishna. Yeah, Indian standards, it's from all those bus horns and loudspeakers, your ears are shot. So I think everything's too low for you. Isn't it? We go to India and we're like, ah! And the Indians just walk by like, did you hear anything? I didn't hear anything. Yeah, because your ears are destroyed. Yeah. The answer to that, your volume's too low, is turn up your speaker. Because it's already as high as it should be or higher on my side. Yeah. So, but yeah, we can do something. Okay. So we all face these positions in life where it's like we need to do something and we're like, I can't get myself to do it, or I don't know how to do it, or I'm resisting doing it, or it'd be better if I could do this, or I need to change this about myself, but it's so difficult or so hard, or I don't know how. So, the big question is, are you going to allow this to get in the way of your relationship with Krishna? That's like a big question. Why don't I write that down? That's such a big question to ask yourself. And this can be so helpful. Because if you ask yourself that question, obviously you want to say no. You can't say yes to that question. And when you say, no, I don't want to allow this, then an impetus starts coming. Okay. Well, I wrote that too. No, I wrote it to the wrong person. Yeah. Someone writes me personally, then I write back, but it's on the wrong. I'm getting in trouble here. Okay. Let's write that to everybody. Yeah. So, whatever you're looking at in terms of I know I should, but an excuse, a resistance, an unwillingness to look at myself objectively, to put the video on me, any of that, you ask yourself this question. I should actually say, am I going to allow this to get in the way of my relationship with Krishna? Let me write it that way. It's better to say it that way. Am I going to allow this to get in the way of my relationship with Krishna? That's a big question. And I hope your answer is, no, I'm not going to allow it. So you look to the future. I'm doing something I need to give up. I'm not doing something I need to do. I'm resisting facing something I need to deal with. And I ask the question, am I going to allow this to get in the way of my relationship with Krishna? Because if I'm not dealing with it properly, it probably is getting in the way, and I am allowing it. And so naturally the question is, no, I'm not going to. So that can be tremendously helpful. I don't know if that answered your question, Krishna Karshani, but that was like, it was a answer to something. Yes, mic is too loud. Now it's better, right? Better now? Hare Krishna. Distortion for the Indians, but Indians are used to. Your story doesn't sound like this in the loudspeaker. Yeah. And they go, I can probably understand you, Prabhu. When you speak like this, it's clear to me. Yeah. True story, little entertainment. Old guy was sitting on a cart with a loudspeaker. He was renting it out. And they were playing music, which you could hear for like in Calcutta from Mayapur. It was so loud. And I saw the guy sitting literally this far from the speaker. His ear was this far from the speaker. And he was just sitting there. Like, I mean, it was really loud, like 150 decibels, like rock concert. And he was just sitting next to it. If the newest profession in India, ear doctors, when people have enough money to go to ear doctors, they'll finally realize they're not hearing anything. They haven't realized it yet. Only the Westerners realize it. Hare Krishna. So, yeah. Okay. Well, we have 6 minutes left. We didn't take a break. Does anyone want to share their realization for what I just was talking about, or a question on that? Yes. I need to hear some objection. I need to hear somebody's screaming mind objecting. I know what one of your screaming minds is saying, but I can't. All right, you can't, but ask yourself, am I going to allow this to get in the way of my relationship with Krishna? Whenever you get to this, I can't, ask that question. That is such a powerful question. And the other question before that, if I don't deal with this, how is this going to play out the rest of my life? Do I want to spend the rest of my life dealing with this? Obviously you don't. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Are you all in shock now or what? Did I give you the shock treatment? And you're like, I don't know what to say. We have a comment from the Mayapur Sangha. Someone's going to say something. I'm going to pin you all so I can see you. I'm going to see if I scared you or something. I have to pin you to see if I scared you. All right. I know I scared Satyarupa. I always scare her. That we don't even have to ask that question. She's scared before you scare her. That's her eternal constitutional decision. There's nothing to fear but fear itself. Oh, I have to tell you something that is so interesting. Some of you may know this. You may have experienced this. Oh yeah, okay. Well, I'll ask this question from the Mayapur Sangha, and then I'll tell you this story. We have this question, what's the relationship between trying to improve myself and praying for help, asking for mercy? The interesting answer to this question is they both have to go together. So if you're a bona fide Indian, you'll think that the praying is more and the action is less. If you're a bona fide American, you'll think the action is more and the praying is less. If you're a bona fide atheist, the action is everything. If you're a karma mimamsa, the action is everything. But the fact of the matter is they go together. You need both. And people who have too much faith in Krishna, if there is such a thing, I will use this word, quote unquote, too much faith, put more faith in praying and less faith in action. I do that sometimes also, because sometimes I can't do any action. So if you can't do any action, all you can do is pray. Like, there's nothing I can do now. You know, it's like I fell out of the truck and I'm on the street. You know, I can't even get up. All I can do is pray. Okay. But generally, the mercy comes. Generally, the action is also a form of prayer because it's showing Krishna you want it through your action. And Krishna wants to see that. So I like to say action is also prayer. And a powerful form of prayer is showing Krishna you want it through your action. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said that without effort or endeavor, you won't get mercy. So it's like, you know, I can pray for mercy and Krishna's like, okay, so you want mercy. All right, sounds good. What are you going to do to get it? That's the question. So you have to think when you're praying, is there anything I can do to get the mercy? Or do I just pray for it and do nothing? Because Krishna wants to see you do something. Unless you've done everything. Your foot is being choked by a crocodile and you've tried for 1,000 years to fight and you can't. And now you're just like Krishna, you know, or like Draupadi. Then it's different. But in the general ordinary course, Krishna certainly helps us when we try. I have found that praying without trying, I have found that praying out of fear, that, oh no, if this happens, what will become of me, doesn't work very well. Whereas doing and praying works better, and praying with faith that Krishna is going to help me do it works really well. But praying out of fear, Krishna help me, if you don't help me, it's over. I'm a mess. I'm finished. That kind of prayer is not so powerful unless it's circumstantial, and that has to be the prayer. Crocodile on my foot, I can't get out. That's the only prayer. Does that make sense? Otherwise, it becomes a kind of tamagun prayer, the lazy man's prayer. A lot of devotees ask me for blessings because they understand that the blessings of a senior is helpful. I just hope they understand when they're asking for blessings, it doesn't mean they don't have to do anything now, that they got the blessings. You know, the joke, you know, the man praying to God, help me win the lottery, and then God says, well, at least buy a lottery ticket. Yeah, he's praying to win the lottery, he hasn't even bought the lottery ticket. So it's something like that, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean? So I was going to tell you a story, which I forgot. So, looks like we're getting some latecomers with questions. Sometimes we think we know what our problem is, but later on discover it was something else altogether that was hidden somewhere underneath. What can we do to pinpoint those underlying problems early on? That is an excellent question. Sometimes you're going to need a professional to help you uncover it. But I would say that's one way. Association of others is another way. Asking them, what do you think my problem is? What can you see that I can't see? And being extremely open and willing to see something you can't see right now, and praying to Krishna, please reveal it to me. That's also powerful. I think it goes back to my saying that if the false ego is too big, you can't see, and Krishna can't shine light on it. He can't shine light on it because you've got the curtains covered. But if you open the curtains, pray to Super Soul, he can shine light on it. So those are three ways. Friends, more introspection, reduction of false ego, and sometimes, if necessary, if it's something deep, there are courses that will help you. There's counseling that will help you like that. Talking about it with a friend also. Sometimes talking about it, you'll become aware through talking. Reading books about it, particular problems you have, become aware. Is that okay? So, in the chat, you will find a link to somebody's something or another, WhatsApp or email. If you give your contact information, you can get a little summary of what we discussed today. Or if you just want to go through the chat and go down everywhere where I wrote something, or Dinanath put it up, then you can. That's it. Oh, Kamini put something up. Yeah, so there's a link there. So if you put that there, then Radhapriya will have the notes. Radhapriya is here, yeah. And then we'll get that out to you. And I guess this recording will be made available also. Maybe Radhapriya, you could give a link to the recording as well, if you want to see it or share it. And this is kind of... this was just actually an introduction to this topic of head to the heart. There's more to be said. But that's for another day. But I would say in closing that this is probably the biggest challenge for us as individuals and for us as an organization. To know something, it's easy. You just know it. You just learn it and you go home and go to sleep. That's easy. But to live it, that is the challenge. And that is the challenge you face, the challenge I face every day, and that is the challenge the movement faces every day. And we've come to some big challenges in our movement. There's more challenges that we're facing now. And what I see is the way that we succeed with these challenges is that devotees really, really do the best they can to act as Paka Vaishnavas. They do the best they can to act as a pure devotee should. And that is always the solution to the problems. So that's just my perspective as a leader over the years. It's seeing that it's that when we act as Vaishnavas, there's always solutions. When we are acting against what we're teaching, there's always problems. Sometimes they come up right away. Sometimes they come up 25 years later, but they come up. That's my experience. So individually and as a society, this is the challenge. You agree? Okay, then in parting, I want to give you a reality check in saying, like that question that was just asked, sometimes you don't always know. But just think of the video. Imagine your life on the video. It will help you. And it's not going to be easy because you're changing patterns and habits and ways of thinking and dealing. And just because it's not easy should not be a reason not to try. In fact, it should be a reason to try harder. And a lot of devotees get discouraged when they find it's not easy. And rather, we should become encouraged when we find it's not easy, because it means it's not easy, so you have to do it harder, right? If the team seems to be a little better than you, do you get discouraged, or you just practice more? You practice more. So that's the attitude. So don't get discouraged because it's hard. Okay? Good or good? Great or great? Ecstatic or ecstatic? Blissful or ecstatic? Yeah. We have a question that's off topic, I think. Action against someone who's violent to you. I just want to pray for the aggressor and avoid him. Yeah, good idea. Take legal police action because that's a good idea. Depends on so many factors. This is a whole other topic. These are like social issues. I will tell you this, Mohini. If a child is abused in America, you're legally bound to report it to the police. If you want to report it to the Child Protection Office in America, they will not even take the case until it's reported to the police. So, in America, we take things maybe a little differently than in India or South America. I don't know. But often in cases of spousal abuse, often the spouse is told, report it to the police, get protection. Of course, in some countries, the police won't do anything, but it may deter the person. It depends on the situation. This is something that I think is, see what's happening. I'll just give you a little insight now, what's happening in ISKCON. It's very, very interesting what's happening. About 14 years ago, there was a committee to look at the succession of ISKCON, of how ISKCON will continue into the future. And once you start looking at succession, thinking you as a leader are not going to be here tomorrow or 5 days or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, then you have to turn it over to somebody. You think of things much differently. You start to notice all kinds of problems that you kind of felt like, well, I'll just handle it when they come. But you realize, well, not everybody can handle it. And you realize you need policies to hand over to people because things like this, like what you're saying, come up. And how do we, what do you think you should do? Well, it's not like, what does he think in this temple or that temple? We need policies. So all of this got this mood of what are we going to do in the future? got exacerbated, sped up because of COVID, because all the teams that normally meet like once in a while in Mayapur or here or there are meeting every week. GBC's meeting every week. We're in a group called Sabha. We met in Mayapur for 4 days. We meet every week now for the last year or so. And all these other groups are meeting. So what I see happening is like so many things that need to be addressed that were not being addressed are being addressed now because we have time to address them. And it just becomes so obvious that an understaffed nonprofit organization has not had the time to address it. But all the GBCs who are traveling all over the world putting out fires are basically sitting in one place, maybe starting jagyas instead of putting out fires. So they have more time to focus. So my prediction is that policies will be enacted for things like this. More and more you'll see this, how to deal with these things. As they become more common, less common in the early days of ISKCON, and also overlooked a lot of these things in the early days of ISKCON. We didn't know how to deal with it or take it seriously. Now they'll be looked at more and taken more seriously. But I don't know your situation. I don't know the details. You may want to take advice from others also. But generally, we would say we want to protect the devotee community from anyone who is potentially dangerous. And you want to protect yourself from anyone who's potentially dangerous. Yeah, so we have to think soberly about it. It's also interesting, I don't know if you know what's going on in the world, a lot, but this younger generation of people is it's very, very is very anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-misogynist, anti-this and that, and very, very much fed up with the inequality that the world has lived through, especially the younger generation. And so, actions which kind of went under the radar 50 years ago, 100 years ago, are now, they're right front and center. So women being mistreated, black people being mistreated, minorities being mistreated, all of this. It's on people's minds. It's in the forefront. So as an organization, people are going to look at us and say, oh, this man is abusing his wife and you don't do anything? Like you don't, and you talk about women protection. So it's not just going to be a personal issue also, it's also going to be preaching issues, or people are going to be looking at us. What are you doing about this? You treat this ethnic group better in your temples than this? What's going on here? So that's what's coming up now in the world. The things that were maybe not such big deals. I mean, they were big deals, but not as big as they are now. They're becoming very big deals now. This is what I'm seeing. Right? If you're, in Western countries, if you, speak ill against homosexuals, that's like people will think, they'll hate you for that. They'll think, what's wrong with you? You're homophobic. This is not spiritual. And in traditional religions, homosexual people were always looked down, outcast, this and that. It's interesting, right? What's going on in the world. So that's also another aspect of what you're saying. What as a movement are we supposed to be doing, both personally and collectively as communities, and also as a message to the world about how we deal with these things. So that's what's going on right now. That's what's being discussed. And it'll be discussed more. It has to be. So that's something to think about. Maybe those of you who live in Mayapur are further away from it, not so close to it, but It's it's very much in the center here in the West. Are you aware of that in Mayapur? All this Black Lives Matter and all that kind of stuff. How it's, so it's Black Lives Matter, but it's all lives matter, and the whole lesbian, gay, that whole thing, transgender. It's just any kind of discrimination. It's really, people are like really upset about it now, and our movement has to address these things within our own philosophy, what we believe about these things, how we deal with these things. Okay? Hare Krishna. So, now it's time to go. We went over time. You got 15-minute bonus. And I'm going to go take breakfast or lunch or whatever it is right now. Okay. Thank you all. And we will be in touch if we want to continue this topic at another point. We will discuss that and see. Hare Krishna to all those beautiful ladies in Mayapur. Especially that little beautiful lady. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.